Well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very busy show this evening. After my moving words about Andrew Neil last month and Mark Kermode, the film critic, this month, who is going to be the celebrity recipient of We Feel Your Pain? Find out in 3 minutes' time. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is the man who beat cancer and went on to win the Grand National. Horse racing icon Bob Champion tells his incredible story at 10. In the Clash, is Harry Potter writer J.K. Rowling transphobic? We'll speak to top author Francesca Spector on how to make the best of the situation if you're alone this Christmas. And Donald Trump's former chief spokesman, Sean Spicer, joins me live from the United States at 11. Plus my amazing panel reacting to the big stories of the day. And my big opinion in 2 minutes. And don't forget, We Feel Your Pain is coming. Who will be the celebrity recipient? Find out shortly. But first up, a very welcome return to the studios and Tamsin Roberts.
Mark, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Foreign Secretary is taking over from Lord Frost in the Brexit negotiations. Liz Truss has been appointed following his immediate resignation on Saturday night. In his resignation letter, Lord Frost cited the government's current direction of travel, as well as fears over coercive COVID measures. Downing Street said Miss Truss would lead negotiations to resolve issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Downing Street has defended a photograph of the Prime Minister and several members of staff in the No. 10 garden, reportedly taken during the first national lockdown in May last year. The Guardian newspaper has released a photo showing Boris Johnson sitting at a table with his then-fiancée Carrie and two members of staff at a time when contact was limited to meeting one other person outside your household. Bottles of wine and a cheese board are on the table. 16 other staff members can be seen nearby. A Downing Street spokesperson told GB News work meetings often take place in the Downing Street garden in the summer months. On this occasion, there were staff meetings following a No. 10 press conference. Downing Street is the Prime Minister's home as well as his workplace. The Health Secretary says he can't rule out new COVID restrictions before Christmas. This comes as over 37,000 cases of Omicron are confirmed in the UK, up 12,000 from yesterday. Asked on the BBC's Andrew Marr show whether more measures would be introduced, Sajid Javid said there are no guarantees and the government is assessing the situation. It comes as scientific advisers told ministers the reported number of people admitted to hospital with the variant is probably around 1/10 of the true number.
We do have to challenge data and underlying assumptions. I think that is appropriate. There are no guarantees in this pandemic. I don't think at this point we just have to keep everything under review.
Meanwhile, Germany is set to tighten restrictions on travel from the UK from 11 o'clock tonight. German nationals, residents and transit passengers will be exempt. Anyone entering Germany from Britain, whether vaccinated or not, will need a negative PCR test and will have to quarantine for 14 days. It comes as the Netherlands have entered a lockdown until at least the middle of next month. Award-winning architect Lord Richard Rogers has died at the age of 88. He's the man behind the design of the Millennium Dome, as well as the Zenith Building in Cardiff, the Lloyd's Building in London and the Pompidou Centre in Paris. Well, those are the headlines. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's Sunday, December the 19th. You're watching Mark Dolan tonight. It's our last show until January the 7th, and we are going out with a bang. My Mark Meets guest is the man who beat cancer and went on to win the Grand National. Horse racing icon Bob Champion is live at 10, and he tells his amazing story. In the big question, is Harry Potter writer J.K. Rowling transphobic? We'll hear from both sides on that one. We'll speak to top author Francesca Spector on how to make the best of it if you find yourself alone this Christmas. She's the author of an amazing book called Alonement, celebrating being alone and making it work. She's live at 10:20. Donald Trump's former chief spokesman Sean Spicer joins me exclusively live from the United States at 11 with all-time low poll ratings. Can Joe Biden survive until the next election? And is Donald Trump preparing for a sensational return to the White House? This is a man that knows, and of course he'll have the answers at 11. Plus my amazing panel tonight, reacting to the big stories of the day and looking at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Tonight, I'm joined by three top political commentators. We're travelling business class, folks. Charlie Peters, Georgia Gilholey, and last but not least, Benjamin Loughnane. Now, my priority for the next 3 hours is to offer you a heady mix of information, debate, and entertainment. And I want to hear from you throughout. My priority is to get your opinions on the national television airwaves. So drop me a line now and throughout the show. mark@gbnews.uk. A big 3 hours to come. Let's get to work. If you thought that COVID modelling, which predicts the spread of the virus, was inaccurate or flaky, think again. It's arguably dishonest. In a majestic piece of journalism, Fraser Nelson from The Spectator magazine had a Twitter exchange with one of the key modellers advising the government, Graham Medley, the chair of the SAGE Modelling Committee. This whole exchange has been written up into an article in the magazine, and it's well worth a read. In this exchange, Mr. Medley seemed to suggest that he has been given a very limited brief and was asked to churn out worst-case scenarios without being asked to comment on how plausible they are. He said we generally model what we are asked to model. He went on, there is a dialogue in which policy teams discuss with the modelers what they need. That's right, folks, what they need to inform their policy. Fraser Nelson asks whether this remit could mean leaving out just as plausible, quite important scenarios that would not require lockdown. His reply: decision makers are generally only interested in situations where decisions have to be made. Hear that one again, it's damning. Decision makers are generally only interested in situations where decisions have to be made. There appears to have been no interest from government figures in Whitehall in having any optimistic data that would suggest measures are not required. They just don't want to hear it. If the news is good, they don't want to hear it. Proof, if you needed it, that modelling, like so much of what we've seen this pandemic, is highly politically influenced. There is an argument to be made that modelling has been a tool for behavioural scientists rather than epidemiologists. Time and time again, what former Justice of the Supreme Court, Lord Sumption, calls junk modelling has shaped our pandemic response and devastating policies like lockdown. On the strength of these revelations, modelling looks to have been a PR exercise, theatre, and perhaps most damningly, a political weapon with which to keep us afraid and to make us comply. We know that the virus's trajectory has all too often fallen below even the modeller's sunniest predictions. And of course, let's not forget Randy Prof. Neil Ferguson, who predicted 500,000 deaths at the start of the pandemic, which kicked off this whole nightmare. We as a public have always, perhaps naively, interpreted the modelling as a prediction of what the virus may well do. That's what we thought the modelling was. But it seems that may not have been its function. If this exchange is to be believed, it was about providing the government with ammo with which to lock us all down and retain a vice-like grip on our daily lives. Modelling looks to have been an answer in search of a question, a means to an end. Now, for me, this has echoes of Alistair Campbell's so-called dodgy dossier, in which allegedly sexed-up evidence was produced to justify the Iraq war. Well, here we go again with politicians asking public servants to manipulate or frame the facts in a certain way so that they can achieve their political ends. And we're seeing more of this doomsday modelling in relation to Omicron, which all the experts are now saying is on a par with a bad cold, including Tim Spector from the highly respected Zoe COVID data app. This government reminds me of the boy that cried wolf. You know that story. This little boy cries wolf a couple of times as a joke. And the third time, when there is a wolf there, no one comes to his rescue. Well, who's going to believe anything that comes out of those hellish government press conferences now? I've done my own bit of modelling, and here it is. Are you ready? I predict that cases of politicians not being trusted will go through the roof, and the public will, I predict, by next spring, be done with this pandemic and any future restrictions. A YouGov poll, courtesy of The Times, already suggests a majority of people are against further measures. That, for me, is a watershed moment. We're now facing the threat of Christmas being cancelled, or punishment for Christmas with a New Year lockdown. The scientific case for these ruinous measures, which damage the economy, society, and feed the spiralling non-COVID death toll, is crumbling. And with clear evidence that the statistics are being gerrymandered, or at the very least slanted in the government's favour, in my view, there is no moral or intellectual case for these measures either. We revealed to the news last night that the Brexit Secretary, Lord Frost, has left the government. This is the dynamic figure who got Brexit done. He's leaving the government, we're told, because of concerns over Boris's uncosted and scientifically debatable green agenda, an ongoing fudge in relation to the Northern Ireland Protocol, which divides our country down the Irish Sea, and the increasingly authoritarian measures seen by this government. It's a huge blow for the Prime Minister after a week to forget. The court of King Boris is crumbling, as is the case for any future lockdowns. So, folks, let's not cancel Christmas. Let's cancel the doomsday sage scientists and their dodgy graphs. It's time now for an occasional item that we do on the show called We Feel Your Pain, in which we reach out to a public figure or celebrity that's going through a tough time. Tonight, the talented LBC presenter and political author, Ian Dale. Last night, Saturday evening, Ian was at home, channel hopping. I'm genuinely surprised that this deeply charismatic man wasn't attending one of a number of parties. So Ian is home alone, and he's flicking channels on his TV. He landed upon Britain's newest, brightest, most exciting national television network, GBNews. It was our Christmas special yesterday, and we decided on this show that after the year we've had, we would have a mix of some hard-hitting political stories, but a bit of Christmas fun along the way. It's a source of deep personal regret to me that Ian missed another of my big opinion monologues that so often go viral about the state of the nation. Here's last night's one. 68,000 views, all about lockdowns, not too bad. And Ian missed the moment we revealed the news of Lord Frost's departure from the government and the comprehensive analysis that followed. Ian missed all of the brilliant viewer emails that you send me across a range of topics, and which are the icing on the cake of this show. Ian missed the newspaper front pages brought to you with wit, energy and a splash of opinion at 11 o'clock. Ian missed my brilliant panel of journalists, broadcasters and comedians. He even missed the Great British Game Show, which we always do before the end of the programme, a fun game created from scratch every day by my incredible team and based on a news story of the day. Last night's game was Famous Christmas Movie Quotes, a game which we called Slay My Name. That's right, we called it Slay My Name. Well done to Caroline for that corker. Ian missed all of those things. The moment Ian's viewing experience was assaulted so egregiously was during the big question. As it was exactly a week until Christmas Day, we decided that rather than tackling a major political or global issue, we'd have a light-hearted debate about which is the greatest Christmas song, and we got some help from the legendary songwriter Mike Batt. The nominees were Bing Crosby, Wham!, The Pogues, Mariah Carey, Slade, and Shakin' Stevens. Well, Ian was shaking with rage because he didn't expect to be confronted with this horror. In fact, it's lucky that he wasn't invited to any parties last night because it meant he had the time to get on Twitter and draw attention to this painful experience he'd just had. He tweeted the following. GBNews have their floor manager Tony singing the Slade Christmas song. Seriously, does anyone really watch this absolute shite fest? Well, it's a great question, Ian. Who indeed does watch this shite fest? You, by the looks of it. A point made by many of the 500 people who commented on your post. In fact, let's take a look at some of the responses, shall we? Here we go. Best news channel there is, Ian, said one tweeter. How about this one? Much, much better than what else is on offer. It's a great channel, a breath of fresh air in today's world, said someone else. How about this one? Love GB News. Stopped watching Sky after it launched. And they go on and on. Now, this is a painful episode for me because Ian is a fine broadcaster and I didn't want him to suffer in this way. It was a profound misjudgment on my part at the tail end of a pandemic and the biggest recession in 300 years to offer my viewers some light relief. I shouldn't have done it. What was I thinking? How could I? Now, I should say that many of you did enjoy that particular item, and unlike Ian, there was particular praise for my outstanding floor manager, Tony. Tony was floored by Ian's response. But Tony, the floor manager, has got to know his place. He's not a national broadcaster like Ian Dale. And floor manager Tony should have a serious think about his conduct. Because floor manager Tony was at the heart of this shite fest. And he needs to reflect on that. 'Tis the season to be jolly. But after last night's unwelcome entertainment, Ian Dale is feeling anything but. Who could blame him? And what the hell was wrong with that remote control that took him to GB News? I think we should have a whip round and buy Ian a new telly, one that doesn't take you randomly to GB News. So Ian, I'm sorry about what happened last night. You deserve better. Ian Dale, we feel your pain. And I'm delighted to say that Tony, the floor manager, is on duty tonight and firing on all cylinders, as well as my amazing panel. Now, we've got a great panel tonight. Writer and broadcaster Charlie Peters, political commentator Georgia Gilholier. Welcome to you on the show, Georgia, and research fellow at the Bow Group political think tank, Benjamin Loughnane. Great to have all three of you with me. If I could kick off with you, Georgia, what do you make of this remarkable exchange between Fraser Nelson of The Spectator and the government's lead modelling expert?
It's incredibly interesting, but unfortunately it's not surprising. I mean, we've seen since the very start of the pandemic these sort of scary over-predictions that never came true. We've seen the scientists such as Neil Ferguson who made those predictions sort of his business to sort of broadcast to the nation on a daily basis, violate those rules. It's almost as if they didn't believe their harsh predictions in the first place, and it's just sort of rumbled on, and this exchange it's nothing new, really. I think it's just sort of another thing bringing that to light.
Yeah, I mean, Benjamin, you just shouldn't weaponise data, should you?
No, one of the things that we've been told since the beginning of this whole thing is you've got to listen to the science. It's all about listen to the science, but this is in no way scientific. This is coming to a policy decision and then making the science fit it so that you can sell that policy. You're going to the modelers and saying, we have this policy, give us some data that supports it, and then they go off and do that. That is not how this should have been conducted. They should have said, give us a low impact scenario, medium impact scenario, and high impact scenario, and we can work out between those three which is most likely to be the case. And if we go with the high scenario and then it's lower than expected, we can move to the other strategy later on down the line. But they just went for the high scenario, only the high scenario, and that is anti-science.
Charlie Peters, giving the government and SAGE the benefit of the doubt, when you're in charge, you always have to work on the basis of worst-case scenario, don't you? Even if I take my young son to the playground, I've got to assume he's going to fall off the slide. I'm not going to hope for the best.
Absolutely. Prepared for anything, ready for anything. That should be the motto of government, especially when it comes to crisis and emergency. But you should also keep an open mind to good news. And I thought this exchange was absolutely sensational. I couldn't believe he just tweeted it out. You know, people have been working on this story for years, and he just said it all. And all it took was a direct question from Fraser Nelson just to ask, so, you know, what is the actual basis of the modelling that you do? And when you prepare for events such as taking your son to the playground or enforcing 65 million people to stay at home, you should consider that your modelling might be wrong and that you have to balance your modelling against positive outcomes and indeed more relaxed policy prescriptions. They just didn't do that, and there's no surprise that their modelling has been proven to be so false.
I think you'll agree I'm living the dream with tonight's panel. Cannot wait to hear their big opinions on the various major stories of the day. Don't forget, we've got tomorrow's papers at 11, and Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's former chief press spokesman, live from the United States. And don't forget, we are going to have the big question in a couple of minutes' time. Is J.K. Rowling transphobic? But before we do that, we'll get more reaction to the sensational resignation of Lord Frost, the Brexit minister. We'll speak to a ex-top Tory. See you after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
I'll get to your brilliant emails shortly, but the government's Brexit minister, Lord Frost, sensationally resigned yesterday, citing concerns over the government's COVID measures, eco-agenda and the strategy for post-Brexit global Britain. Lord Frost has been one of the most liked and respected figures in the Conservative movement in recent years, and it's clear that he was integral in helping the Prime Minister to get Brexit done. And in his absence, it leaves the thorny issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol and a visible border down the Irish Sea unresolved. Well, breaking tonight, a photograph's been published by The Guardian newspaper appearing to show Boris Johnson at a wine and cheese party in the Downing Street garden in May 2020, when the country was still in the first strict lockdown. I'm so bored of this now. Partygate, it just won't end. But what are the wider implications of this news? Is the court of King Boris beginning to crumble? To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome live from the United States, former Conservative MP Douglas Carswell. Hi, Douglas.
Merry Christmas from America, Mark.
Well, Merry Christmas. Look, Douglas, I know you've got to go in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for joining us for a brief moment. Your reaction to the departure of Lord Frost, what are the implications for Boris's premiership?
I think of all the issues that have afflicted the current administration over the past 2 weeks, this is potentially the most serious. And I think the reason for that is because of the kind of person that Lord Frost is and what he represents. I first met David Frost about a decade ago when he was the British ambassador to Copenhagen. And he struck me as being one of the rare things you find in the Foreign Office, a British diplomat who actually believes in Britain. And he was instrumental in delivering Brexit and getting Brexit done. He's a master diplomat, but also a committed Brexiteer. And I think it's quite alarming that a man like that should choose to leave this administration, not simply because of what it may or may not tell us about the government's intentions over the Northern Ireland Protocol, but what kind of country are we going to be post-Brexit? Are we simply going to carbon copy everything that the European Union countries do? Or are we going to fundamentally change our economic structures so that we become more globally competitive? Well, David Frost was pretty clear as to where he thought we needed to go. And the fact that a man like that is no longer in government around the cabinet table making the case for a more competitive, outward-looking global Britain, I think that should alarm us all. Look, all governments, with the exception of the Thatcher government, since the Second World War, have been pretty mediocre and have managed decline. We can change all that, but we need a government that is more Maggie and less John Major. And I fear that with the departure of David Frost, I fear there's a risk that this government becomes John Major-ish in its approach. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think we should certainly be very concerned that that is what will happen.
In Mississippi, let's speak at much greater length in January. I wish you and your family and friends a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
I would love to. Thank you, Mark. Merry Christmas.
Brilliant stuff. Well, there you go. A fascinating set of comments from Douglas Carswell, a man that has been very much at the heart of the Conservative Party in the past. And I think that lots of what he has said will give Boris Johnson sleepless nights. Let's speak to my panel about this now. Georgia and, of course, Charlie and Benjamin. Charlie, I'll start with you. How do you respond to what Douglas Carswell had to say there?
I think comparing the Johnson ministry to John Major is incredibly generous to Boris Johnson. I mean, I think the government is remarkably tepid. It's dull. It does nothing. There's no excuse with the whole COVID situation. There have been plenty of opportunities to set out a bold and exciting domestic agenda, but it's just been kind of tired, reheated Blairism, a kind of a silent, unthinking following with environmental policy, dull politics, no energy, Charlie, no charisma. What's there?
Charlie, I mean, Boris got Brexit done, didn't he? What about the vaccine rollout? What about the furlough scheme? I'm against lockdowns, but if you're going to make people stay at home, the furlough scheme was a policy triumph which saved millions of jobs.
A policy triumph that they were forced into pushing after people reminded them that they hadn't done it. And now, the COVID stuff, I think, has generally been a success in terms of vaccines and procurement. And when it comes to stuff like furlough and sick pay, that's all great. But when it comes to the broader domestic agenda, we have an incredibly high tax burden, the highest since the post-war rationing era. And what does it stand for? What does the government actually stand for? I said it before and I'll say it again. It's reheated, boring Blairism. There is no identity, there's no energy, and I think he should move on.
What do you think about this, Benjamin?
I think this is one of the worst things that could have happened for Boris, losing Lord Frost, of all people. You know, it's one thing for a member of your cabinet to resign over the direction of your government, but for someone who's so key to the main thing that Boris is supposed to have got right, which is Brexit, that's the one thing that after the last 2 years he can say, well, at least I got Brexit done. I mean, if your Brexit minister is resigning over the fact that he doesn't think it's properly done, and he doesn't think that it's going in the right direction, on top of the tax rises, the approach to COVID Plan B and vaccine passports, etc., 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 that's a really bad sign for Boris, because what can he now brag about? What has he actually done in the past 2 years?
Are we being a bit hard on Georgia, on Boris with regard to this? I mean, who would be Prime Minister during a pandemic? Isn't Lord Frost showing a degree of disloyalty?
No, I disagree with you there, Mark. I think that it's actually interesting if you look at Lord Frost's resignation letter released yesterday. He didn't mention anything about the Northern Ireland Protocol, but it comes after sort of days and the last week of reports that the UK are now going to try anything in their power to not trigger Article 16 over the ECJ, the European Court of Justice oversight in the Northern Ireland Protocol, which obviously really damages, you know, Northern Ireland's place in the Union with being also still part of the Customs Union. And I think that Lord Frost has been very, very vocal about his, you know, willingness to trigger the article and suspend the Northern Ireland Protocol if this sort of goes on and he doesn't get the deal that he believes, you know, really keeps Northern Ireland an integral part of the UK, which right now it really isn't. It'd be interesting to sort of see the long-term impact of this if we will just sort of keep the Northern Ireland Protocol as it is, and also going forward, you know, Catholic people who believe in a united Ireland are actually en route in terms of demographics to outnumber unionists soon. So I think we could even see, you know, in the next few decades, Northern Ireland leave the UK.
Yes, it does seem like the government have lost a conviction politician with a robust set of balls. I wonder, Georgia, whether, in terms of Boris himself, can he pivot? Can he change? Can he turn this ship around, do you think? Is a sort of reimagining of his premiership still possible?
I mean, if you think about it that way, I suppose anything's possible. I think it's highly, highly unlikely. Boris Johnson, he's a former journalist. I say this, you know, insult to myself. I'm also a journalist. He's been very morally eclectic in his approach when he was a journalist, when he was the Mayor of London, when he was an MP, and of course, when he was Foreign Secretary, and also, you know, when he's been Prime Minister. He seems to be one of those people, almost like Tony Blair. He's the figurehead. He's very charismatic. He has the sort of what people go for, you know, when they're voting in a general election, maybe for Brexit. He has the slogans and everything. But in terms of the actual policy, let's be real, it's the people around him defining that. It's his allies in the cabinet, that kind of thing. He isn't some kind of, you know, genius. And I think that the way things are going, I think that they really are in danger at the next general election.
My fantastic panel will return later in the programme in the news agenda. Lots of questions to get through, by the way. Should we have a referendum on the BBC licence fee? Is it time for the Queen to step back from her public duties? Not abdicate, but to retire. I'll also be asking my panel whether Tony Blair might come back to save the Labour Party. And will you be having a green Christmas? And don't forget, before the end of the programme, another great British game show. We look forward to that one, a fun game based around a news story of the day. And tonight's theme is Great British Architecture. But coming up in The Big Question, is J.K. Rowling transphobic? We'll hear from both sides on that one. And don't forget, at 10 o'clock, I meet the legend of horse racing, Bob Champion, of course, a man that prevailed over cancer, came back to win the Grand National on Aldenite in 1981. He's live at 10. His story's incredible. It inspired a movie, so don't miss that. You can get your questions into Bob Champion, Mark at gbnews.uk. Plus tomorrow's pages, front pages, I should say. We've got the headlines coming in as we speak. So lots to get through. It's never boring. Not on my watch. See you in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So much to get through. I'm itching to read out your emails. I'll do them after our next item. Billionaire Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling has been airbrushed out of her own franchise. Barely mentioned in the trailer for her latest movie, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. She also did not appear in the HBO Max Harry Potter reunion special. This as news emerges today that two Quidditch leagues, Quidditch of course a fictional sport originating from the Harry Potter books, are to change the name of their league in order to distance themselves from Rowling. So they're playing a fictional game of Quidditch, but they're not going to call it Quidditch anymore because they've gone off J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, by the way, has made a few Quidditch over the years. All of this is a response to her statements about the transgender community. So what has J.K. Rowling actually said which is so controversial? Well, my team have been doing a bit of digital archaeology, and I want to thank them for finding these tweets. So first of all, this is one tweet, and she said, "People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumban? Wimpund? Woomud?" You've got to say she does have a way with words. Humour is always best served dry. In another tweet, she responded to an article about Police Scotland saying they will record rapists as women, male rapists as women, if the suspect identifies as a female. Let me help you with this. This is a biological man with a penis and testicles who rapes a woman and gets to be called a woman, because that's how she identifies. Well, Rowling responded. She said, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The penized individual who raped you is a woman." So is J.K. Rowling transphobic, and does she deserve to be edited out of the Harry Potter universe? A universe she created. Welcome to Bonkers 2021. To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome two good friends of the show. Broadcaster and journalist Sam Dowler, of course, a regular on Dan Wootton's amazing show, Dan Wootton Tonight, and Kelly J. Keane, presenter, commentator, and women's rights campaigner. Kelly J., I wanted to have you on the show a couple of weeks ago. I lost my voice and we didn't get to do it, so we must get you back in the studio. But can I ask for your reaction to what's happening around J.K. Rowling? You know, Quidditch gets renamed and she's airbrushed out of Harry Potter history.
Well, what's happening is we are burning the witch. That's what's happening. We've got a lot of misogyny and sexism floating around these parts. And unfortunately for J.K. Rowling, like most of the country, she thinks that women don't have penises. She thinks that woman is not an ugly word and that we should be allowed to say woman when we mean woman. And for that devastating crime, she has to be cancelled, even from her own art, which is frankly repulsive. Look, she's a very nice woman. I wouldn't be quite so kind to the people who are erasing. If I had that much money, I'd be suing left, right and centre, a few copyrights here, copyrights there, and I'd certainly be much more vocal. But she's being very dignified and restrained.
Sam Dowler, who are people who menstruate?
People who menstruate, well, they are women. And this is the problem. What we're talking about here is that this isn't about sexism. It's not about misogyny. It's about the choices that she's made to wade into what is a completely toxic argument at the moment. And her problem here is that I think she's transphobic without realizing she is transphobic. What she's doing is she's conflating sexual criminals with trans women. And by doing so, she is therefore putting them further at risk and alienating not just her own fans, but clearly Warner Brothers and the actors who appeared in the films that she's created herself.
But Sam, doesn't the idea that a male that identifies as a female that rapes someone, that they get classified as a woman, doesn't that sort of represent the extreme aspect of gender ideology and why someone's got to call it out?
No, I agree, and I think that at the end of the day, this story was about suspects, not rapists. We're talking about people who have been accused. So and it's about them self-identifying, etc. And all the police did was say that they would respect that right. And obviously, she has taken umbrage against this, which she has done many, many times over. And by doing so, she once again places herself at the centre of this argument, whereby she is in the wrong, and she's coming across as transphobic, and also it's so sad because there are so many kids who have grown up loving Harry Potter, myself included, and by saying the things that she has said and getting involved in a conversation that really, I don't know why she is doing it, she's single-handedly destroying her own legacy. And of course, Warner Brothers and the actors who are in the films want to distance themselves from her because I honestly don't know what she's doing.
What is she doing, Kelly J. Keane? Why has she waded into this debate?
Yeah, why would a woman actually want to stand up for women's rights? Why would a woman not want men who call themselves women to be recorded as committing male crimes? When, Sam, we talk about when she corrected the whole idea with the Orwell little bit that she did, what she was talking about was the idea that men who call themselves women, which I take it you might call them trans women, are actually being accused of rape. So we are talking about rapists unless we don't do the whole I believe her, and actually we don't believe women even when they talk about rape. But she's standing up for women's rights. This is not an attack on trans rights. She's been very kind about people that call themselves trans. This is about saying that women are a unique category of human, and we are allowed to have private spaces. We are allowed our own language. We are allowed to make sure that our crime statistics don't include men who rape women. We're allowed to say that women in prison are allowed to shower without male rapists showing them themselves naked in the shower. And if those women call those men, they get more time on their prison sentence. So I'm surprised more women aren't speaking up, but J.K. Rowling is leading the way, and more women, I'm sure, will follow.
I mean, what is it that J.K. Rowling has said that's so controversial? I mean, is it transphobic, Sam, to say that only women have a cervix?
No. Well, it's not transphobic, but it isn't true. A trans man can have a cervix. A trans man can have a child and a baby, and so these are. I mean, obviously, this is we're getting into semantics, but at the same time, what she's doing is she's being part and parcel with erasure of, gender non-conforming people, and by always bringing it back to crime, it is therefore again she's conflating sexual predators and criminals with trans women. And of course, trans women are, some of the most vulnerable members of society. So again, here we are talking about rapists in the same sentence as trans women. And this is what she has done. And this is why people say she's transphobic. And this isn't to do with feminism. I mean, women's rights are not in conflict with trans rights at all.
They are 100%. They are 100% in conflict.
No, they're not, Kelly. They are not at all.
They are.
And it is,
If a man
it is a shame. It is
a woman,
the fact that Warner Brothers and these huge companies want to distance themselves from her is because of this.
It's because they've got no backbone. Look, Warner Brothers have got no backbone and no cervix. The bottom line is these great corporations are so terrified, Sam, of the woke trans lobby.
No, it isn't a woke trans lobby. It's to do with vulnerable people, and it's to do with fans of Harry Potter. I don't know why she is getting involved in it again.
Are the people threatening to kill J.K. Rowling vulnerable?
Sorry, again?
Are the people threatening to kill J.K. Rowling vulnerable? I don't think so.
Well,
they sound pretty militant
that is
to me.
Appalling. And again, now you're saying that all trans women are threatening J.K. Rowling. For the most of the part, as MPs have said in the past, the majority of the people that threaten them are straight males. So I mean, this is again, as I said, we are dragging this through the mud again. And trans women, all they want to do is be left alone to live their lives, not sucked into this argument about how they are potentially criminals. Somebody puts a wig on and goes raping somebody is a criminal. They aren't a trans woman.
Oh, so suddenly if they identify as women at the point of being arrested under suspicion of rape, they're no longer trans women. Sam, do teenage girls have the right to use changing rooms without adult males in those changing rooms, people that you would call trans women?
Of course they do.
They do have the right.
A trans woman is so you're saying that somebody who has been through the entirety of transitioning and wants to use a female toilet and go, so they aren't women.
Well, for a start, it's a very small number, and no, I don't think any man can ever become a woman at all. I'm just very clear on that. But
what about a trans man with a cervix? Are you saying that they have to use female toilets as well?
No, I'm saying that women are more vulnerable and therefore women have the right to have female-only space. If some women identify as men and want to use men's spaces, that's entirely up to them. They don't pose a threat to those men.
Kenny J, that's double standards, isn't it?
No, it's talking about the fact that there are 12,000 sexual predators in male prisons and the whole population of females in prison is 3,000. So we are talking about we know that men are much more likely to be violent and commit the sexual assault than women. Let's not pretend that we don't know these things. Up until 5 minutes ago, that was something that was completely okay to say, that actually men are more violent and they pose much more of a threat to women than women do to men. So,
but Kelly J, we're talking about a tiny minority of trans people who might turn out to be awful violent criminals.
Which are a tiny minority themselves.
Well, it's a tiny minority of men that rape women, and yet we still don't want men in women's
all
space.
Muslims are terrorists, for goodness sakes.
No, we're talking about biological sex.
Exactly the same thing.
It's not exact. A belief system is not exactly the same as biological sex. That's a very silly thing to say. What we're talking about is the fact that men are more likely to commit violent crime against women than other women.
No one's denying that.
Well, then that's why women need female space more than it's not okay for women who call themselves men to go in men's spaces.
Yes, I know, but the people who you're talking about, these criminals, they probably aren't even trans women at all, but they're just opportunists. So therefore, you're tarring them all with the same brush, which is ridiculous. That's like 99% of trans women basically aren't allowed to use female toilets because 1% of people might be a criminal. It's ridiculous.
No, that's saying trans women aren't allowed to use female toilets because 100% of them are men. That's why they're not allowed to use female toilets.
That is ridiculous gender critical views. You are very.
I'm not gender critical.
Most women don't believe that. The government doesn't believe that. So you're in the minority there.
Actually, the government does. When it comes to being able to inherit a title, the government is very clear on who is a man and who is a woman. You cannot transition into inheritance. So let's not look. People in power.
What's that got to do with what we're talking about?
You just said the government. That's quite clearly the government, right?
I'm saying the government allows trans women to use the toilet where they feel where they gender identify.
There are no rights on trans people using toilets.
Final thought on this, Sam. What about those numpties, the second-rate actors from the Harry Potter movies who have made millions as a result of the genius of J.K. Rowling, who have thrown that poor woman under the bus?
Well, I completely support them. They're absolutely correct. Why would they want to? Why would they want to support somebody who is marginalising vulnerable people, which is what she's doing? Well, of course they don't. Of course they don't respect that. And they've all distanced themselves from her, as have Warner Brothers, and it's completely the right thing to do.
If it wasn't for her, they'd be doing adverts for anal warts. Adverts, by the way, that I've turned down. Kelly J. Keane, what are your thoughts about the treatment of J.K. Rowling by those who have made millions on her behalf?
It's despicable, and it's very interesting that the lovely Roman Polanski has not received such a cancelling for his crimes, and the fact that he won't go and be tried for those crimes, which is sexual assault and rape against a minor. So it's very interesting. I mean, it is because this woman has a cervix that she is being targeted and she is being cancelled.
That isn't why at all. That isn't why at all.
It totally is. It is. There are many men that have said things very similar, if not. I mean, you yourself back in 2010 used a slur against trans people, and you haven't been cancelled. And yet here is J.K. Rowling, one of the most beloved authors that literally got millions of children across the world to read.
That was in 2012, where it was part of the queer vernacular to use that word, and everybody has completely agreed with that. So it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to bring up at this point.
Well, no one's getting cancelled on my watch. I'm a huge fan of both of you. Sam Dowler, I know you're back with Dan Wootton in January for a big, bright New Year performance. So Sam, of course, will be joining Dan very regularly on his panel in 2022. Thanks for joining us. And Kelly J. Keane as well, presenter, commentator, women's rights campaigner. Kelly J., please come back to the studio. I want to meet you properly in the flesh. My thanks to both of my guests for the big question there. It was a fiery one. We don't do boring, not on my watch. What's your reaction to that? Get your emails in, mark@gbnews.uk. Let's catch up on some of those emails, shall we, Caroline? Lord Frost's departure. Victor, good evening. Thank you for your email. Victor says, hi, Mark. I believe there is more to his resignation than is being let on. Their story will, in my opinion, get bigger. I think you're right, Victor. I think there's an awful lot at play in the corridors of power at the moment. But I think of the three things that happened to Boris this week, which was Partygate, the by-election loss, and Lord Frost, I think by an order of magnitude, Frost is the worst thing that has happened. Let's have a look at this. Boris's parties. Jackie says, I'd like to know who's leaking all the photos with regard to the so-called parties. Obviously, someone is doing their utmost to bring Boris down from the inside. I think they should have an investigation into leaking of such trivial stuff. Next time, it could be something important. And Lord Frost, Gordon says, it's a real shame that Lord Frost has resigned. He was dealt a bad hand by Theresa May and wasn't helped by the continuing fifth column that we have in the UK, who support the EU and cheer any hurdle that they put in our path. But Liz Truss is a good successor. Gordon, thank you so much for your thoughts on that one. Lots of emails in support of Boris as well. Many people think that this is a concerted attempt to bring down the Prime Minister. Let's be clear, the guy's got a mandate, an 80-seat majority, charisma. He got Brexit done, the vaccine rollout, furlough and much more. So are we being tough on Boris? Are you still backing the guy? Let me know. Let's get some support for Boris in the House, shall we? It's all about balance on this show. mark@gbnews.uk. Really excited because cancer hero and racing jockey supremo Bob Champion is live at 10 o'clock. And don't forget, Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's former right-hand man, is next. So get your questions into Bob Champion now, mark@gbnews.uk. And we've got FAQs, how to enjoy Christmas alone. First up, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Leanne has emailed the programme. Kelly J, your guest, is right. Men cannot change into women. Most trans women keep their penises, so they shouldn't be allowed in female-only spaces. There you go. Well, look, strong words from Leanne in Glasgow. We get emails from all over this great country. Keep them coming. mark@gbnews.uk. Really excited about the last 2 hours of the show. This is the season finale. It's our final programme until the 7th of January. I'm going to miss you hugely, but we're going out with a bang. My Mark Meets guest in a couple of minutes' time is cancer hero and racing legend Bob Champion, a man who inspired a movie, joins us for Mark Meets. Also, Donald Trump's former chief spokesman, Sean Spicer, live from the United States at 11, and another great British game show. Plus, should there be a referendum on the BBC licence fee? All of that to get through, but first, the headlines. She's back, Tamsin Roberts.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. Here are the top stories this hour. Downing Street has defended a photograph of Boris Johnson and several members of staff in the No. 10 garden, reportedly taken during the first national lockdown in May last year. The Guardian released a photograph showing the Prime Minister sitting at a table with his then-fiancée Carrie and two others at a time when contact was limited to meeting one other person outside your household. Bottles of wine and a cheese board are on the table. 16 other staff members can be seen nearby. Well, a Downing Street spokesperson told GB News that work meetings often take place in the Downing Street garden in the summer months. On this occasion, there were staff meetings following a No. 10 press conference. Downing Street is the Prime Minister's home as well as his workplace. The Foreign Secretary is taking over from Lord Frost in the Brexit negotiations. Liz Truss has been appointed following his immediate departure on Saturday night. In his resignation letter, Lord Frost cited the government's current direction of travel, as well as fears over coercive COVID measures. Downing Street said Ms Truss would lead negotiations to resolve issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The Health Secretary says he can't rule out new COVID restrictions before Christmas. This comes as over 37,000 cases of Omicron are confirmed in the UK, up 12,000 from yesterday. Asked on the BBC's Andrew Marr show whether more measures could be introduced, Sajid Javid said there are no guarantees and the government is assessing the situation. It comes as scientific advisers told ministers the reported number of people admitted to hospital with the variant is probably around 1/10 of the true number.
Do have to challenge data and underlying assumptions. I think that is appropriate. There are no guarantees in this pandemic. I don't think at this point we just have to keep everything under review.
Meanwhile, London Mayor Sadiq Khan says it's inevitable that new measures will be introduced.
But the trends, but I think if we don't bring in new restrictions sooner rather than later, you're going to see even more positive cases and potentially public services like the NHS on the verge of collapse, if not collapsing.
Meanwhile, Germany is set to tighten restrictions on travel from the UK from 11 o'clock tonight. German nationals, residents and transit passengers will be exempt. Anyone entering Germany from Britain, whether vaccinated or not, will need a negative PCR test and will have to quarantine for 14 days. It comes as the Netherlands have entered a lockdown until at least the middle of next month. That's all for now. You're right up to date. Now let's get back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Well, it's very, very busy the next couple of hours. All of my guests. I've got Sean Spicer, of course, Donald Trump's former chief spokesman. My brilliant panel reacting to the day's big stories and tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do a couple of emails before we get to my amazing Mark Meets guest. Let's have a look at this. Where shall we start? Support for Boris. Patrick says, how can you support Boris, a criminal who has taken our freedoms? I hope he ends up in The Hague. Strong words there from Pat on that one. How about this? Very interesting email from David. In response to my big opinion at the start of the show, which I'm delighted to say, Carl has crafted into a seamless video. In fact, We Feel Your Pain, which is about LBC's Ian Dale, and my big opinion about modelling are both on our Twitter feed. Go to @GBNews and you'll find both of them there. But David says, Mark, just out of interest, what are the political views of those two flip chart scientists that we see at the press conferences? Of course, I think you're referring to Whitty and Vallance, David. Why won't they have a debate with other qualified scientists? If we are following the science, shouldn't we be taking note of all qualified scientific voices? David, a brilliant email, and I couldn't agree with you more. Mark says, D. Hale, the same could be said for climate change as for COVID. The unproven theory that climate change is man-made is underpinned by highly questionable modelling, which cherry-picks data or omits it altogether to support a desired outcome. A lovely bit of humour from S. Horny5, who says, Mark, Omicron B is an anagram of no crimbo. Love it. A quick response to our big debate question, a big question, of course, debate section of the show. And let's have a look at this. Nicholas says, the world's gone nuts. I agree with J.K. Rowling's views. Get back to nature, male and female. It's in all species of life. Just accept it. Kathy says, I thought for a long time we're not a democracy where you're able to think what you like, but a dictatorship where you're only allowed to believe what a few people want you to believe. Kathy goes on to say, I know now for sure that we live in a police state, but I'm confident that J.K. Rowling will survive. She's got enough money to live on. Somewhere else. A very lucky girl. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for that. I'll get to more of your opinions shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. But it's time now for Mark Meets, in which I interview the biggest names in the world of entertainment, sport, academia, journalism, or someone that simply has a big story to tell. Well, my guest tonight is a huge name who has the ultimate story. Bob Champion, CBE, was a highly successful jump jockey, a serial, relentless winner of races, before being struck down by testicular cancer in July 1979. This hugely popular figure saw a nation pray for his recovery. It took time and was hard fought, but the theme of this guy's life and his career is winning. Following his miraculous recovery from cancer, Bob Champion bounced back in the best way possible, winning the 1981 Grand National on Aldenite. Who could forget it? This incredible story, of course, became a film, Champions, a box office smash, with John Hurt playing the man himself. I'm told he asked for Clint Eastwood. What a movie. I remember going to see it at the cinema with my family. Not a dry eye in the house. Now, of course, this man has achieved so much beyond sport. In 1983, he formed the Bob Champion Cancer Trust, which has raised more than £15 million for research over the last 38 years. And in October, Bob said cancer has become the forgotten disease as a result of the pandemic. A book about his life, I'm Champion, Call Me Bob, is currently flying off the shelves in bookshops. And I'm delighted to say the true legend that is Bob Champion joins me now. Hi, Bob.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Privileged to have you on the show. Do you still like horse racing?
Of course I do. I love going racing, I must admit. Haven't been able to go very much over the last 2 years, to be honest. I think I've only been about 3 times, actually. I went to Fakenham not long ago. That's the only jump meeting, and a couple of meetings at Newmarket. Hopefully we don't get locked down again and be able to go over the new year, but we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yes, there's nothing like Boxing Day at the races, is there, or New Year's Day as well. Bob, when did you first get a taste for horse riding?
Well, I grew up in the northeast of England, and Dad always had horses around, and so basically he always wanted me to ride, and he stuck me on a horse when I was about 4 years old, and I was riding it for about 2.5 minutes, and he decided it was time to start jumping. And I still remember to this day, he pulled out a ladder, chased me over it. I jumped the ladder, fell off the other side, and didn't want to see a horse again. Thankfully, Dad kept out of the way, and I started doing it myself, actually, and really enjoyed it. And from that day, I always wanted to be a jockey.
And jump jockeys require enormous skill and enormous courage. Are jump jockeys born or are they made?
I think it helps to be a good horseman, actually. And, you know, I did hunter trials and things like that, and rode cross-country quite a little bit. I think that helped me. And, you know, I was always too heavy to be a flat jockey. And I love to be a flat jockey because they earn twice as much more money than the jump jockeys. But I loved every day as I was a jump jockey, rode some lovely horses, rode on Group 1 tracks most of the time. It was a privilege to be a jockey, I must admit.
When I learnt to ride a motorbike, Bob, my trainer said, it's not if you come off, it's when. How many times do you think you've been thrown off a horse?
Oh, quite a few in my life. Every jockey has, even the likes of John Frankham, who in my opinion was the best I've ever seen jumping. I used to ride a motorbike when I was about 10 years old and actually loved it, actually. put it together, and used to go down the roads as well, which you weren't allowed to, but, you know, we were kids, so loved it.
And is that another aspect of being a great jump jockey, that you need a certain personality, a certain appetite for danger? Have you always been a gambler in that sense?
I suppose so. You know, you've got to love the game, to be honest. And, you know, you're a fool if you don't realise you're going to get hurt, because every jockey does get hurt. Thankfully, I got through my career, I broke an awful lot of bones, but I came out in one piece. There's quite a few jockeys ended up in wheelchairs and things like that, and killed as well. But I was very, very fortunate. I got out in one piece.
What were the qualities in a horse that you were looking for when you did a race?
Well, as a jockey, one, they've got to have ability and they've got to try. But the most important thing in jump racing, they've got to be able to jump economically, really. And that's the main thing.
I wonder whether that's someone calling you, asking you to run in the 2:30 at Chepstow tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it might be. You know, they can wait, whoever it is.
You might have to skip dinner just to lose a couple of kilos. I haven't heard a phone like that since the last century, but there you go. Well, we'll plough on regardless, Bob.
It's the just on the phone, you know.
Yeah, maybe it's a Hollywood producer saying we're going to do the second part of your life story. Off he goes. He's going to answer the phone now. Take the call. Take the call, Bob. It could be important.
No, that's all right. I've got rid of them. Okay.
Listen, that could have been the wife asking you to come home.
Well, most likely, but I'm down in London at the Royal Horse Show, actually. So it's a great show, and I've been here with the Shetland Ponies Grand National team. They do it for my cancer trust. Over the last 4 or 5 years, they've raised about 140,000 for the trust, and they're great kids, actually, I must admit, and they love it. And you know, they can do it between about 8 and 13. And as long as they keep under 5 foot, and but they're good kids, and you know, some of them will make jockeys, and a few have in the past. Jim Crowley, champion flat jockey, he started. Sam Twiston Davis, he started in it, and he's second in the championship at the moment. Tom Garner, he's in America riding, and he's second in the championship over there. So it is a good grounding, not just for racing, it's for show jumping, eventing, dressage, all different aspects of racing, and riding, not racing. It's a great grounding, and, you know, they're good kids, I must admit, and they try hard.
Bob, has it ever bothered you that perhaps you're defined by some people by your cancer diagnosis? Is it a bit of an albatross around your neck?
I suppose it is in a way, but hopefully I've done a little bit of good, actually. I lived, and that was the main thing, because when I went into hospital, the Royal Marsden, my treatment was very, very new. They gave me a 30% chance of living, and they gave me no chance of riding again, because the drugs basically did all my lungs and everything in, and it was hard to get fit. But now, you know, testicular cancer, with all the new drugs and scientists and all the research, is 95% curable now, long as it's caught early enough. And that's why, you know, basically, I do the charity, you know, the Bob Champion Cancer Trust. We've got 2 or 3 research laboratories in England. We've got 2 at the Royal Marsden. That's been very, very successful. And 1 at Norwich in the Science Park. And that's really successful. And we've been, you know, very, very lucky. We've got good scientists. But if it wasn't for people in this country that subscribed to the Cancer Trust and done things for it, we wouldn't be going and doing such good work. And we were involved in a small way in the AstraZeneca vaccine as well. You know, we had to pull away and do other things. So we have been doing a very, very good job. And without people supporting the trust, we couldn't have done it. And, you know, hopefully with all our research, there's going to be lots of different ways, not saying actually curing the cancers, but prolonging people's lives. Hopefully we'll cure people as well. But early diagnosis, that's the most important thing. If you can catch these diseases early, you've got a great chance of beating them.
So any chaps watching, what do they need to look out for to identify testicular cancer, Bob?
Well, basically, and I was one that never did anything like that, you should check your balls, let's be honest. And if there's any difference, go and see a doctor. I know it's hard now to see a doctor, to be honest. You've got to ring them up nowadays, and you're very lucky to see one because of the pandemic. But always check your body. And it's the same thing with ladies as well. Check your breasts and everything. If you know there's a bit of a change, and I was stupid, I'll be honest, I did nothing about it. I thought it was a result of a kick in a race one day and did nothing about it. Nearly left it too late. You know, I got to stage 4 out of stage 5. If I'd left it another month, I wouldn't have been here. So I was very, very lucky. And, you know, basically, I still did nothing, but I was in America and I'd ridden a winner at Delaware, and I started going out with a vet, a lady vet, mind you, and having ridden the winner, managed to get her into bed that night. And the first thing she said to me was, if I was you, I'd get on the first plane back to England and see a specialist. Well, I promise you that put me off my stroke. It really did. And I got on the plane and went to see a doctor, Dr. Alan Thomas at the Park Street Clinic those days, who used to patch all us jockeys up through our injuries. And he sent me straight to the Marsden. And that saved my life, to be honest.
What were your emotions when you got that diagnosis, Bob? Did you think it was game over?
Yes, I did. I was petrified, I must admit, and absolutely devastated. And I thought, how long have I got left? And the treatment those days was barbaric. I promise you, vinblastine, bleomycin, platinum, and other things pumped into you for 6 or 7 days, 2 or 3 days off, then they'd hit you again. And you were virtually dead after the treatment. You were sick 24 hours a day. When you got home, they used to say, don't go near anybody who's got a cough or cold, you'll catch septicemia. Well, I got septicemia twice and nearly died. They changed my blood and came round again. I was very fortunate. I must admit, if they hadn't got me back to the hospital, I wouldn't have been here. But the hard thing, when I finished the treatment, was the getting fit, because I came out with I'd lost about 60% of lung capacity. I still haven't got it back. I've got about 95% back now. And that was the hardest thing, to breathe properly, especially being a so-called athlete, jockey, where you've got to have 100%. So I had to train harder and harder to get fit, and it took me longer than I anticipated. But I did go back to America, and the reason I went back to America was I knew the weather would be nice and warm over there. It was winter here in England, very cold winter, and I couldn't breathe in the frosty days. So the sunshine got me back a couple of months quicker than I would have in England. I would have got fit here, but the sunshine did help.
Bob, 2 years later, 2 years after your cancer diagnosis, with a 30% chance of survival, you won the greatest race in jump racing, which was the Grand National, perhaps the single greatest sporting event in this country behind the FA Cup final. How did you do it? How did you win the Grand National 2 years later, Bob?
I had the right horse on the right day, actually, but it was
modest.
A horse I'd said years before he'd win a Grand National one day, and I knew what was needed for a Grand National winner because I'd won on Rag Trade when he won his very first chase. He went and won a Grand National. I didn't ride him in the Grand National. Also rode Highland Wedding in the race before he won the National. Eddie Harty rode him in the National because I was only a kid, really. So I knew what was needed. And when I was at Toby Balls, I looked after Rubstick as a 2-year-old when I was a stable lad. So they all gave me the same sort of feel. And, you know, he was a good horse, but he always had so many leg problems throughout his career. We managed to get him back. He came back to Ascot when I was just back riding again and won at Ascot, the Whitbread Trial. And then 6 weeks later, he went to Aintree and right horse on the right day. Everything went right for me, I must admit. He jumped for fun. I enjoyed it, and he enjoyed it. And, you know, to me, I'll never, ever forget it. You know, it was a tremendous day. But it was my lifelong dream from about the age of 5. You know, the day I wanted to be a jockey was I was at Redcar one day. Dad used to take me racing, and Lester Piggott rode a winner. And Lester Piggott, to me, and always will be, was a genius. And that was my inspiration to be a jockey. And, you know, thankfully, I did it, you know, because when I went to school, I occasionally popped into school, and my form master, you know, used to say, always live your dream. And the careers officers came round, and being from the northeast, I had 2 choices. Go down Skinny Grove mines digging out iron ore, 15 miles under the North Sea, which used to cave in quite regularly and kill a few people, or Dorman Long Steelworks. And I didn't really want them. And I got to 14, and Mr. Mackenzie, my form master, said, these careers officers pushing me that way, and he said, always follow your dreams. And left school at 15, moved south, got a job in racing, and to this day, I'll always remember when I came in from winning the National, as I was walking into the unsaddling enclosure, Mr. Mackenzie was there with his thumb up. And I'll always remember more than anything that, you know, he told me to follow my dream.
Now, listen, Bob, I want you to get back to the festivities. It's been such a thrill to have you on the show. I'm getting endless emails, everybody sending their best wishes and their congratulations to you for your recovery and your amazing sporting success. And that's what defines you, Bob. You are a winner and an incredible, iconic jump jockey. A final question for you, briefly if you can. There was a movie inspired by your life, called Champions. I watched it with my family on holiday. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Tell me about watching yourself on the big screen as interpreted by John Hurt.
Well, John, to me, he's an absolute genius. You know, the best actor there is, actually. And we didn't do a lot of talking about it. I used to go quite often press days, really, when he was filming. And I didn't tell him what to do and anything like that. He just likes to do things his own way. He knows how these people... He used to watch how I walked and things like that. Utter professional. And I did say to him one day something that... John, I said, you're making me out to be too nice. And he looked at me and said, if I made you out to what you really are, nobody would go and see the film. But that was just him making a joke, actually. But he was fantastic. But the real part of the film was great. The music was out of this world. Written by Carl Davis and the Philharmonic, and that is fantastic music. And Shirley Bassey and Elaine Page did the records sometimes, went up the charts. But the music used every year by the BBC, well, ITV now with the Grand National. It's beautiful music. And, you know, Carl Davis, what can you say about him? He's an absolute genius.
Well, it takes one to know one. Now, Bob, thank you for giving up so much of your evening to talk to us and to delight our viewers. For those that feel that they can stretch to a couple of quid, I would urge them to have a look at your amazing charity. It's 40 years old now, 4 decades. bobchampion.org.uk is the email address, and it's Bob Champion Cancer Trust. Bob, go and have a brilliant evening, and I hope we get to cross paths again in the future.
Thanks.
Brilliant stuff. Wonderful Bob Champion. Once again, the website address, bobchampion.org.uk, and I do remember watching that film on holiday with my family. We loved it. It was huge. Now, coming up, should we scrap the BBC licence fee? According to a new poll, nearly 2/3 of British voters think so. Here's the question: should there be a referendum? Do you remember when we used to have referenda? Should there be a referendum or a public vote about the licence fee? My all-star panel will be weighing in on that one. Don't forget, we've got another great British game show coming up as well before the end of the programme. Sean Spicer, live from America, Donald Trump's former press spokesman on the Orange One. But after this, in Frequently Asked Questions, we'll be speaking to Francesca Spector, a brilliant author and podcaster. She's behind an amazing phenomenon called alonement, and it's very much about enjoying the time that you have by yourself. We'll be having a look at the challenges if you find yourself alone at Christmas, which sadly, because of COVID measures, will affect many, many people this particular Christmas. So the art of being alone at Christmas after this, plus the weather, plus your emails. See you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed, another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Now, in case you're just joining us, we have a regular tongue-in-cheek item on the show called We Feel Your Pain, in which we reach out to a celebrity that's going through a tough time. Mark Kermode, the film critic, Andrew Neil, former chairman of GB News, and a few others as well, Lionel Messi and Scarlett Johansson. So Ian Dale, the LBC presenter, is in very esteemed company, and a charming response from Ian Dale, the brilliant LBC presenter, on Twitter just now. Let's have a look at this. Fair dues, Mark Dolan. Love to Tony. Well, Ian, thanks for being a great sport. And I knew you'd see the funny side. And here is Tony celebrating that response. Tony, where are you? Floor manager Tony, we've got a lovely photograph of him with his winning smile. Of course, floor manager Tony featured very much in this particular discussion. And that's my little face. God, you've seen enough of me for now, haven't you? We will select that very, very shortly. But lovely stuff. Thank you, Ian, and good luck with your next LBC show. I'm a regular listener. So, lots more to get through in the next hour and a half. I'm delighted to say my panel are going to be reacting to the big stories of the day. Should the Queen not abdicate, but retire? Should she step back from her royal duties? We'll be discussing that. And also, is it time for a referendum on the licence fee? I personally think the BBC should stay, but I think its funding model must change. But what's your view? We'll discuss that later in the programme. Another great British game show, and Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's former right-hand man, live at 11 from the United States. But it's time now for FAQs, frequently asked questions, in which we take a deep dive into a topic in or around the news. With stricter COVID measures potentially coming before Christmas, and with many self-isolating already, it's likely many people will be spending the 25th of December on their own. So how can we make the best of a bad situation? Let's speak to the star of the Alonement podcast, which has spawned a best-selling book of the same name, in which we're encouraged to celebrate and enjoy time by ourselves. Obviously, being alone at Christmas isn't great, but how can we make it work? I'm delighted to say the author of Alonement, How to Be Alone and Absolutely Own It, is Francesca Spector, who joins us now. Hi, Francesca.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm really well. Great to have you back on the show. Well, being alone at Christmas is especially hard, isn't it?
Yes, it's a time when there's a very, very overwhelming narrative around togetherness, having the perfect family, and being in this sort of movie perfect scenario. And the reality of it is that coming up to that Christmas this year, as with last year, it's not going to look like that. It's estimated that just under 1 million will be self-isolating with COVID, so possibly suffering from symptoms as well. Not great. Other people might be having a smaller Christmas or even a solo Christmas that was not anticipated because of differing views from family, or all sorts of things that are happening, or the possibility of new restrictions. And I think that at a time when we hear all these songs, we hear all these films, we see all these adverts around being together, it can feel like a lesser than Christmas to be spending it alone.
So give me your alonement survival guide for Christmas, because your book is a treasure trove of clever life hacks that help you to enjoy being alone, such as giving yourself a little treat, maybe going on a date with yourself, popping to the cinema, or getting a coffee and just enjoying reading a newspaper or having a look at Twitter if you're feeling brave. But what are the particular tips you might recommend for the big day, the 25th?
for those approaching spending the 25th potentially alone, what I would advise is to cultivate what I describe as solitude skills, rather. Now, we assume that time alone is lesser than and that it's going to be of less quality, but that's because many of us don't have these solitude skills, which are effectively the version of social skills for making time alone a better way to be. So the tips that I'd advise is to simply, throw out the rule book. We're used to this from last year, and to know that things don't have to look a certain way. So to think, how would a day of indulgence, festive or otherwise, look on my terms? What do I like to do? Perhaps making a list of those things. And from then on, going and planning ahead as soon as you can, being able to plan ahead that time for yourself on your own terms. If you fancy a festive Christmas alone, even sitting there with the television schedule and ringing that, or, buying all your favourite Christmas foods, whatever will make you feel festive, and knowing that that's totally possible by yourself. Or you might just think, look, this is a time of rest and reset. We forget that Christmas comes just before New Year, and it's possibly for many of us the longest time we get off work all year. So you might just approach that entire period from the 25th onwards as a time for journaling, a time for reflection, a time for doing things that make you feel good about yourself, going for walks, eating healthily. You might not even have to make it a Christmas time at all, but just thinking this is going to be a time when I work on myself. And that's what alonement is all about. Whether alone time is chosen or not, it's saying this time does not have to be inferior to time with others. This is my relationship with myself, and that's important too.
Yes, well, let's bring my panel in on this, if I may. Georgia, Benjamin and Charlie. Benjamin, the issue we've got, it's just, 6 days till Christmas now, and there are still people that don't know whether they'll be spending Christmas alone because of the COVID self-isolation rules.
Yeah, I think humans are fundamentally social creatures, but there are times when you do need to be alone. You need to withdraw and reflect and give yourself that sort of isolation just for your own health. But I don't think Christmas is that time. I think Christmas, the whole point of it is about getting together at the darkest time of year, in the middle of winter, and sort of surrounding yourself with people, because it's such a bleak and miserable time in the middle of winter that you really do need to surround yourself with cheer and other people and festivity. And, I obviously there is a time for being alone, but I don't think it's the middle of December.
How about you, Charlie? Can you imagine spending Christmas alone?
I can imagine it because I've been in a few self-isolation experiences over the last 2 years, and it wasn't particularly pleasant. So it's not a nice thing to imagine. So Francesca makes an interesting case about looking after the self and eating healthily and reading a newspaper, going for nice walks. But those are all things that you can do with other people as well. They don't seem like particularly precious, self-focused experiences. Unfortunately, she's also broadcasting to a panel of 3 Catholics here. So we all see Christmas as an incredibly important family occasion, but also a religious occasion, which we share with our loved ones. And so the idea of being by ourselves during that time is very damning, very sad.
Make that 4 Catholics. What an unbalanced show today. We'll have to look at that. It's interesting, isn't it? Georgia, I'll come to you in a moment. But Francesca, it seems to be personality types. Some people are really good at being by themselves and others struggle with it.
Yes, it is. And I'll hold my hands up and say I'm an extrovert. Actually, that's why I came to the concept of alonement to begin with, because I was someone who didn't see any time alone as positive or as something that was of any value. And it was realizing through integrating bits of that into my day, into my week, that it actually gave me a really balanced view. And it was something that let me have a space for myself to do those things that are good for you. Now, it's interesting that it's been interpreted as choosing to be alone on this day, because, of course, what I'm getting at is that many of us will not have chosen to be. And this is a plan B option. This is a pragmatic approach to the situation that many people will be finding themselves in. And I think that it's a choice at that point. It's a choice of whether to use it as something that can be positive or not. And I think perhaps for introverts who are able to quite naturally know what positive alone time is, that's so much easier. I know that 3 years ago, before I even started thinking about alonement. As an extrovert, I would have just seen Christmas Alone as an absolute nightmare, as a horror story. There would be no redeeming part of that. And I think that through having the narrative of alonement, Catholic or otherwise, that it's something you can take and lean into, and perhaps, be able to practice your religious traditions as much as possible within that space.
Georgia, whether it's going to the pub on your own or going to the cinema on your own, society characterises being by yourself quite negatively, doesn't it? Alonement gets a bad press.
In a way, yeah, possibly. I think sometimes we do. And I think that it is, especially in sort of, the very busy rat race society we live in, especially in London, it is important to sort of take time to reflect and have time by yourself to process things. However, I think when it comes to religious festivals or cultural festivals like Christmas, for example, it is about community, it's about family, it's about coming together. The word church means congregation, community, for example. And I think that it's very important that people like Francesca are setting out sort of coping mechanisms for people who might be forced to be on their own. She's saying it's not always a choice. However, I think that it's a bit dangerous maybe to sort of normalise that. And I think realistically at Christmas, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you don't really want to be alone at that time.
Well, Francesca, of course, it is just a few days away, and I would recommend that our audience take a look at your book. It's called Alonement, How to Be Alone and Absolutely Own It. You can also check out the podcast of the same name, Alonement. And Francesca, I believe you're joining us in the studio to be part of our panel in January. Looking forward to that. So we'll catch you soon. And whether you're on your own or with friends and family, have a very Merry Christmas. Brilliant stuff. Now, lots more to come. Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's former head of press, is going to be with us at 11 o'clock. Can Joe Biden survive until the next election? Big problems in the United States. We'll discuss that with him. He's got a book out as well, so look forward to catching up with one of the most significant and decisively important people in Donald Trump's first administration. But here's the question, will there be a second? We'll discuss that after 11. Many have been struck by how vulnerable and poorly the Queen looked during her meeting with the Sultan of Oman at Windsor Castle last week. Painful as it may be to contemplate, is it time for Her Majesty to step back from her duties, not to abdicate, but to more or less retire? We'll discuss that with my panel after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's time now to look at the day's big stories and react to tomorrow's newspaper front pages. with my amazing panel, writer and broadcaster Charlie Peters, political commentator Georgia Gilholey, and research fellow at the political think tank, the Bow Group, Benjamin Loughnane. Now, nearly two-thirds of British voters want a referendum on whether to scrap the BBC licence fee, according to a new poll. The Mail Online reports nearly half of viewers think the Christmas Day BBC One schedule does not offer value for money. Call the Midwife and Mrs Brown's Boys are the highlights. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's reportedly told friends he thinks the corporation's neglected its primary duty of giving the public vital health information by dedicating too much time to the alleged Downing Street parties last year. So, what do you think? Should we have a referendum on the licence fee? Is it fit for purpose? What do we think about this? Georgia, what's your view? Do you watch the BBC or listen to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I listen to the Today programme on Radio 4 most days, actually, just it sort of helps me catch up on the news first thing in the morning. I do agree that the BBC has major issues with impartiality. We actually saw a scandal over the past few weeks where they accused a group of Jewish teenagers who faced assault or verbal assault while they were celebrating Hanukkah in Oxford Street. The BBC accused them of chanting Islamophobic slogans with absolutely no evidence, and that's sort of an ongoing case, something that was very disappointing to see. So I think that two-thirds of the British public are absolutely justified in wanting the BBC's funding model to be reformed. I think the question is a referendum the best way to do this? The government has an 80-seat majority. They could sort of pursue a policy of change if they wanted to. We don't need a referendum for this, so it's sort of, will the government do that or won't they?
Yeah, maybe we've had enough of referenda for the next few years. I mean, what do you think is the best funding settlement for the Beeb? I mean, some people think the Beeb should be disbanded altogether, but what do you think is the future for the Beeb?
I mean, I think having a national broadcaster is it's something that we should aspire to, and obviously we have achieved that, and the BBC has done many great things. However, I think that sort of the sort of metropolitan elite that it's staffed with right now, it's not necessarily, as you were saying a moment ago, providing value for money. It's not necessarily being impartial. It's not providing the best entertainment either, because obviously we're not just talking about news when it comes to the BBC. We're talking about the dramas and things that they produce. I think probably the best model at this point would just be outright privatisation. Though it almost seems defeatist to say that, because I think, hopefully it could be reformed. But I guess we'll sort of...
But if it was privatised, what would that look like? So the licence fee would go and the Beeb would have adverts?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, how else could you privatise it unless, let's say they had some huge donors who were willing to give them money that didn't want adverts, which is sometimes what you see with certain news websites, like The Guardian, for example. They don't have ads usually on their website.
What about a subscription model?
Yeah, I suppose that's something that could also work, but it's, would people pay to subscribe to the BBC?
And that's why we should question the importance of the licence fee. If the licence fee was voluntary, would the Beeb raise the 3 or 4 billion that they currently do every year?
I think you can doubt that pretty confidently. I think that's true as a grave understatement. Well, I mean, when you threaten people with jail and grave state power for failing to pay for your news and entertainment, then I think obviously a few scared folk will pay up even though they don't necessarily want to. So I think the approach to this discussion about referendum on licence fees, you're right to say we've had quite enough referenda for the best part of a century.
But what happened is that there'll be a result and then a load of politicians will try to stop it happening.
Well, there we go. I mean, the reason why this BBC debate is so fraught, so fractured, is because it is the voice of the establishment. It is right at the heart of all of the people who very much enjoy wielding power over the British public. And so,
but the Beeb will say that lefties think the Beeb is right-wing, and right-wing people will say that the Beeb is institutionally woke and left-wing.
I think this is a lazy trope that BBC defenders push out all the time. And so,
lazy?
If it's BBC? Oh no, who could possibly accuse them of this? But they always say, if the left hate it and the right hate it, therefore it must be balanced. This is thinking which you wouldn't credit an 8-year-old. You can quite demonstrably see that the BBC skews towards a position which is reflective of those who work there, which tend to be the metropolitan, university-educated, city-dwelling people. I mean, this is true without, I think, controversy. So, yes, it is true that sometimes they get it wrong on what you would say are typically left-wing issues, and lefties get upset. But the vast majority of people who work at at the BBC very much come from one particular liberal perspective.
And I wonder whether Brexit really did for the Beeb's credibility in many parts of the country, that the Labour Party is having a crisis because of its position on Brexit, and the BBC has seen reputational damage because of their perceived bias around Brexit coverage.
Oh, yeah, sure, and a whole host of...
Is that fair?
I think it's absolutely fair. I mean, in terms of the commentators that go on the BBC these days, it's very much people who are stridently opposed to Brexit and also the kind of the political atmosphere that comes with that vote. But also more broadly, I mean, when they choose to interview people who are pro-Brexit, I mean, at the time, it felt like they were just going into northern towns, finding someone who was pissed up on some cider and being like, tell me what you think about immigrants. You know, it wasn't, I would say, the most balanced view in terms of dealing with the issue. There were many more salient voices they could have picked and they chose not to.
Yeah, wasn't Nigel Farage of this parish on Question Time about every 10 minutes? I mean, people complained he was on it non-stop.
Well, I mean, he is the face of Brexit. He is Mr. Brexit. So, I mean, I think it's right that they pushed him on. Not that the Leave campaign wanted that, of course. They thought he was too polarising. But the BBC let him through, perhaps with the knowledge that he was polarising, happy to have someone who was possibly damaging Brexit's benefit on their screens all the time.
Well, I'm delighted to say he's now ours, and he's not going anywhere. He's not going on the BBC, he's not going on Channel 4. In fact, he's back tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Can't wait for that. Now, let me ask you about this, Benjamin. What do you think is a satisfactory funding model for the Beeb going forward?
Well, I think just on the point of the referendum, no referendum, just scrap the licence fee. You've got an 8-seat majority, do it. But in terms of what would be a satisfactory funding model, well, they've already got an enormous amount of funding that they will keep, even if we scrap the licence fee, in terms of the assets that they have accrued over the years through that funding model. So they do still need to be under the same requirements in terms of...
They make at least £1 billion in selling formats around the world.
They sell around the world, and that seems to me like a massive loophole in the way that they're funded. But no, it needs to be some sort of subscription basis, but you need to maintain that level of impartiality.
What about general taxation? Because that would be my preferred model, that you simply... it goes to central government, and what the government or any political party will do in an election is have a manifesto that says what they'll do with the money for the Beeb.
Yeah, that'd be a good model. But one of the things that is an issue with the current model is that it comes from a time when there were 4 channels and 2 of them were the BBC. Now you've got so many channels that how do you apply that model to every single channel that exists or none of them? You've got to be sort of even-handed about it.
Do you agree with the principle of us having a national broadcaster and keeping the Beeb?
No, I don't. I think that whenever you have a national broadcaster, it will, to some degree, become infiltrated and used like all institutions do in that way. It will become commandeered and taken over. It will never remain impartial.
So does that mean that you agree with Rupert Lowe, who joined me on this show 2 weeks ago, who said that the BBC should be disbanded, not defunded, disbanded?
Well, possibly it'd be one thing we'd have to look at, but yeah, it does.
Wouldn't that be an act of
now.
Cultural vandalism? I mean, think of all of the great creativity that's come from the BBC, whether it's orchestras, Only Fools and Horses, Brideshead Revisited, you name it, Mastermind, Question Time. There's quite a few valuable properties in the BBC's oeuvre, no?
It's as good as it is bad. There's as many great things as horrific, awful things on the other end of the spectrum. It's just extremes.
The other thing is, if it gets privatised or if there's a different funding model, I want there to be some acknowledgement that we are the investors, because we're the ones that have paid for all those TV shows. I find it very irritating that the iPlayer hasn't got every single BBC programme in history on there. Yeah. Why is it that episodes of Only Fools and Horses or 40 Towers I've got to pay for through BritBox? I've already paid for them once.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and it needs to be democratised as well. So people need to be able to say, "I want."
We own those shows.
We own those shows. Give them to us.
They belong to us. We are the shareholders. Charlie.
I don't want credit for some of these shows. Quite frankly, I don't want to be thanked for Mrs. Brown's Boys, for example. I think
it's a classic.
Keep me out of it.
My mum Diane loves Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Well, good for Diane. She can be credited for it.
My mum thinks she's a lady.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she, her. And of course, Mrs. Brown most certainly is.
Absolutely.
Don't want to enter that particular...
No, we don't want to ruin all of our careers at the start with that kind of commentary.
So I wonder, I mean, look, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't know whether anything will change anytime soon. Briefly, if you can, Georgia, the issue we've got with this government is they said, we're going to reform planning laws, and then they watered them down. And they're going to, get the BBC to be impartial, and that seems to have, got watered down as well. Do you think the political will is there in government to do something about the Beeb?
No, and I don't think that is an exclusive issue to to the matter of the BBC, I think we saw a lot of bluster and a lot of strong words in the election from the Conservative Party, and have they delivered on their promises? Well, no, because they're politicians.
Well, there you go. What do you think? Do you watch and listen to the BBC? Is it worth the money? I'm quite torn about it because I think the BBC is a great institution, but I really feel the licence fee itself is outdated and harder to justify. I told my young son about the licence fee a few months ago. He thought I was joking. I was like, no, it is a thing. You have to pay it. Lots more to come. GB News is free, and we've got another free hour coming. Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's right-hand man, after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's our season finale. It's our last show until January the 7th next year, and we've got an amazing last hour of the programme. Sean Spicer was Donald Trump's press spokesman. Of course, he was the guy that hosted those rather iconic press conferences. He's got a story to tell, and he'll be telling that story at about 11:05. Also, I've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages brought to me by Mescana, and it doesn't make good reading for the Prime Minister. And in our news agenda with my brilliant panel, is Tony Blair considering a return to public life? Could he be the person to rescue the Labour Party? And another great British game show before the end of the programme. And today featuring the work of a great British architect who sadly died today, Richard Rogers. So lots to get through, but first, the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. Here are the latest headlines. Germany has now tightened restrictions on travel from the UK. The new rules, which came into effect at 11 p.m. this evening, mean that carriers such as airlines are banned from transporting British tourists to the country. German nationals, residents and transit passengers will be exempt. However, anyone entering Germany from Britain, whether vaccinated or not, now need proof of a negative PCR test, and they have to quarantine for 14 days. The Foreign Secretary is taking over from Lord Frost in the Brexit negotiations. Liz Truss has been appointed following his immediate departure on Saturday night. In his resignation letter, Lord Frost cited the government's current direction of travel, as well as fears over coercive COVID measures. Downing Street said Ms Truss would lead negotiations to resolve issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The Health Secretary says he can't rule out new COVID restrictions before Christmas. This comes as over 37,000 cases of Omicron are confirmed in the UK, up 12,000 from yesterday. Asked on the BBC's Andrew Marr show whether more measures would be introduced, Sajid Javid said there are no guarantees and the government is assessing the situation.
Do have to challenge data and underlying assumptions. I think that is appropriate. There are no guarantees in this pandemic. I don't think at this point we just have to keep everything under review.
Meanwhile, London Mayor Sadiq Khan says it's inevitable that new measures will be introduced.
But the trends, but I think if we don't bring in new restrictions sooner rather than later, you're going to see even more positive cases and potentially public services like the NHS on the verge of collapse, if not collapsing.
Downing Street has defended a photograph of Boris Johnson and several members of staff in the No. 10 garden, reportedly taken during the first national lockdown in May last year. The Guardian released the photograph showing the Prime Minister sitting at a table with his then-fiancée Carrie and two others at a time when contact was limited to meeting one other person outside your household. Bottles of wine and a cheese board are on the table and 16 other staff members can be seen nearby. A Downing Street spokesperson told GBNews work meetings often take place in the Downing Street garden in the summer months. On this occasion, there were staff meetings following a No. 10 press conference. Downing Street is the Prime Minister's home as well as his workplace. Well, those are the top stories. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's 4 minutes past 11. Donald Trump's former right-hand man, Sean Spicer, live in a couple of minutes. But first, this. Yes, at this time every night, we bring you the first look at tomorrow's front pages. And let's start with the Metro. Interesting headline, Christmas restrictions hang in the balance. Health Secretary refuses to rule out tougher measures this week to limit the spread of Omicron, saying there are no guarantees that the UK will avoid a circuit breaker lockdown. The Daily Telegraph next. PM looks at plea to limit mixing at Christmas. Boris Johnson is considering urging the public to limit household mixing over Christmas as he risks a new row with his cabinet, of course. A row that has caused the departure of Lord Frost, a story that we revealed live on last night's show. Speaking of Lord Frost, Liz Truss takes over Brexit brief. Liz Truss has been handed responsibility for the UK's negotiations with the European Union following the resignation of Lord Frost as Boris Johnson abolished the role of a dedicated Brexit minister. Back to me, Sebastian, for a second. I think that is quite an interesting story, isn't it? Liz Truss fills the gap left by Lord Frost. Now, the problem for the Prime Minister is that he needs Liz Truss to sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol. That's the invisible border down the Irish Sea, which reprehensibly divides our country. And if she does a great job, then she's in line, surely, to be a serious prime ministerial candidate. If she does a bad job, then Boris is left with a difficult situation when it comes to that protocol and whether he should trigger Article 50. So not for the first time, the Prime Minister is between a rock and a hard place. Let's have a look now at The Guardian, shall we? An interesting headline in The Guardian. Johnson and staff seen at Number 10 event in lockdown. Photograph there of what looks to be a wine and cheese party. They're doing a lot for the dairy industry, the government, aren't they? Let's be honest. And, of course, French red wine producers. Boris Johnson's been pictured with wine and cheese alongside his wife and up to 17 staff in the Downing Street garden during lockdown, raising questions over Number 10's insistence that it constituted a work meeting. Well, it wasn't exactly Glastonbury, if you look at that photograph, was it? I mean, they're clearly in a work setting. They're outside and they're having a couple of cheese nibbles whilst drinking a glass of wine. They're all colleagues. It's basically a workplace, isn't it, Number 10? I think this is much ado about nothing. I also think that we're just punch drunk from these Partygate stories. And I think, as I said to my team earlier, that they're losing their impact. I think the political damage from Partygate has been and gone. But that's just my view. I think what's important and what matters to you, may I suggest, is the outrageous cost of living in this country. Surely that's a much bigger concern. Let's go to the I newspaper next, shall we? Christmas restrictions hang in the balance. Let's get to our next paper, please. OK, now the Sun newspaper. Jingle Bell lock. COVID Christmas fears. Jabs hit 1 million a day target. Curbs on pubs and mixing still loom. OK, next up. OK, thank you, Jake. We got the Mirror now. Coronavirus crisis. D-Day for Christmas. Further restrictions fear as Johnson set for crunch talks. Let's go to the Times now. Sunak resists new COVID restrictions before Christmas. Well, that's good news. Rishi Sunak is one of at least 10 cabinet ministers who are resisting calls by scientific advisors for new coronavirus restrictions to be introduced before Christmas by questioning the accuracy of official modelling. Questioning the accuracy of official modelling? Oh, my goodness, you might want to have a look at my big opinion monologue, which is on Twitter right now, crafted into a short video by Carl, in which I've said exactly that. That modelling is questionable at best. Very encouraging there that Rishi Sunak appears to be standing his ground when it comes to future pandemic measures. Of course, he's reluctant because he's the Chancellor. He's seen the books and he knows we can't afford it. It's very interesting. I think that if Rishi Sunak were to resign as Chancellor, Boris is over. So I think he enjoys quite some considerable political leverage at the moment. OK, Jake, what have we got next? Let's go to the Independent, please. Tighter COVID rules could be in place by Christmas. Javid refuses to rule out new restrictions in bid to stem Omicron. To stem a virus we know to be mild. The world's gone mad. And it's interesting, he refuses to rule out new restrictions, and you can read into that an interpretation that those restrictions will therefore definitely come. The Express, no guarantees of escape from tougher Christmas rules. In Liz we trust, say the Express, Foreign Secretary to lead Brexit talks. Perhaps the greatest test of her political career to sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol and help us achieve the full advantage of Brexit. Last but not least, the Star. Jingle Bills chock shock. Santa is feeling the squeeze on his hobnobs amid fear the cost of biscuits is set to soar. Experts blame wheat prices and COVID. What is your favourite biscuit? That is the key question of the day. What is your favourite biscuit? Do you like those Nice ones? I don't, because you can taste the dry coconut in them. Do you like a custard cream? Is a wagon wheel a biscuit? Not quite sure. I've got a soft spot for butter shortbread. I've got a taste for those whilst living in Edinburgh for 4 years. But what kind of bicky do you like? Do you dip it in tea or coffee? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. We've got some other rather more global issues to deal with as well. Speaking of which, let's do this. Yes, it's that time in the show in which we tackle the dark underbelly of the news agenda, with a migrant crisis on the US border, spiralling inflation, a crime wave in its great cities, state-by-state division over how to handle COVID, and continued fallout from America's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. This has been a year to forget for Joe Biden, whose poll ratings are at an all-time low. It's anticipated that he will see a total collapse in support in next year's midterm elections, which can mean only one thing: Donald Trump measuring up his curtains for a return to the White House in 2024. But will it happen? And if he runs for a second term, does he win? No better man to answer that than Sean Spicer, who served as the 30th White House press secretary and the White House communications director under President Trump. I'm delighted to say that Sean's latest book, entitled Radical Nation: The Dangerous Scheme to Change America, is out now. It's winning rave reviews. And Sean Spicer joins us live from the United States. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Good evening.
Great to have you on the show. I'm very well indeed. And a Merry Christmas to you and yours stateside. Tell me about your book, Radical Nation: The Dangerous Scheme to Change America. Tell me why it has that title.
It has that title because I think most Americans assumed that Joe Biden would be this pragmatic institutionalist, this moderate, the deal maker. And I think what Biden told people during the campaign was that he would be the most progressive president ever. The people that he's chosen, the policies that he's pursuing are radical. And I think that what we miss in analyzing Biden is that he understands legacy. And that is that if you are 78 years old when you get elected, meaning that you'd be 82 facing re-election, let's be honest, that's not going to happen. You realize that you must get as much done as quick as possible with that time that you have. I talk in the book about a meeting that Biden had real early on with a bunch of liberal historians, where he tried to figure out, how do I outdo Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the great New Deal, that icon of the left, to become this progressive president. So I think that whether or not it's growing government, making the District of Columbia a state, letting people flock over our southern border because you want additional voters, over and over again, you see the people that he appoints and the policies that he pursues in pursuit of this progressive legacy that he wants to achieve.
Does Joe Biden have dementia?
I'm not qualified to answer that.
Is he physically fit for high office and mentally fit?
Well, look, I mean, the way it works in the United States is you get if the Electoral College certifies your election and you get sworn in office, you're certified unless there's a 25th Amendment invoked by the cabinet. They are not going to do that. So, frankly, there's a lot of parlor games. He just had his physical. The White House doctor said that he's good to go. I'll take the doctor's word on that. But the reality is, I talk about this in the book, that Republican senators have come to start calling White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain Prime Minister Klain, for a reason probably more familiar to your audience than to ours here in the States. But I think you have a White House Chief of Staff that is really driving the train in terms of the agenda and the appointments and the decisions that are getting made.
What do you think, Sean, will be the legacy of this Democratic presidential term when we get to 2024? I mean, obviously, we have to take into account the pandemic. Of course, President Donald Trump had to deal with the early stages of it. But how do you think these 4 years will play out for the history of America?
So there is no scenario right now, unless Republicans literally shoot themselves in the foot, that they don't take over the House of Representatives in 2022. That being said, this administration knows they have 11 months to get as much done as possible. So most administrations would tack to the center, figure out how to moderate their position to sort of stem any losses in a midterm. This administration realizes Pelosi said that she's not running for another term. They know they've only got the House for 11 more months. They're going to get as much pushed through as possible. Here's the question. Where is Joe Manchin come down on this, the senator from West Virginia? Because he is the key to getting anything done. So whether or not they get 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of that progressive legislation done all hinges on whether Joe Manchin, and to some extent, Kristen Sinema, the senator from Arizona, okays that agenda. So Biden right now is doing a lot of things by executive action. He's appointing people like Pete Buttigieg, the first LGBTQ member to lead a department, the first 4-star transgender person to be in an administration. He's doing a lot of things by appointment and executive action to try to claim the mantle. But right now, I mean, you laid it out early, between immigration, the economy, COVID on the rise, and a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. Right now, there's not a lot that they can point to, if anything, that is positive. So they can talk about what they're trying to do. There's really nothing that they have done. And at the end of the day, Mark, he was elected on 3 big promises: unifying the country, stemming COVID, and getting the economy going again. He's 0 for 3.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, Sean, your reluctance to make a medical diagnosis about Joe Biden. I'm not in a position to do that either. But I just take the view that America's president is the world's president, and we're all invested in the leader of the free world being compos mentis and physically fit for the job. I've got my profound doubts. However, he will be there most likely until 2024. I think it's harder to identify who is a greater liability, Joe Biden himself, Sean, or his vice president, Kamala Harris, who's been accused of trying to shut down an interview after she clashed with the host over President Biden. Take a look.
I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Simone. I'm so sorry, Charlamagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
You can hear me? Well, I'm sorry, we got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me. Y'all see that?
I can hear you.
Oh, so who's the
I
real?
can hear you.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne.
I really.
Come on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
That's an extraordinary scene. What do you think's going on there, Sean?
You know, Mark, the funny thing is, it takes the British press to show me that, because all the press that we've seen of that interview in the United States takes out the part of her aides trying to stop it. And it's amazing that that happened. Honestly, it's funny. I've seen that clip over and over again for the last, 12 hours. But I have not seen the version that you just played, which just shows that the U.S. press is so complicit in covering up. But I think the greater point that you're making is, think about this. Biden's built-in protection right now is that he has a vice president that has a 28% approval rating. I have an entire chapter in the book on this, because Kamala Harris was not chosen because she was qualified. Think about Biden to Obama, Bush to Reagan, you name it, Cheney to George W. Bush. Vice presidents typically have experience and qualifications that augment the presidency so that they can give the best advice. Kamala Harris spent 4 years in the Senate. She was chosen because of the color of her skin and her gender. That's it. Joe Biden said it during the campaign, I want to choose a woman of color. I want to make history. But now he's paying the price for it. He has a vice president that is wildly unpopular. She got booted out of her own primary process before the Iowa caucuses, which are the kickoff. So I think that it's built-in protection, because after her is Pelosi, for goodness sake. So right now you've got Republicans hoping and cheering that Joe Biden stays healthy because his vice president is such a more horrible alternative.
Yeah, well, I find it hard to disagree. She seems to put her foot in her mouth at the earliest opportunity. Sean, Donald Trump, your former boss, made a spectacular appearance here on GB News in a world-exclusive interview with Nigel Farage. He was fighting fit. He had energy, conviction. Do you think he's considering another run for the White House?
Absolutely. I think if the decision had to get made today, he would run. He would win the Republican primary. And if the general election were held today, he'd win that too. There's no way that anybody on the Republican side could possibly credibly challenge him. Or his hold on the base is like nothing that I've ever seen, not just in modern history, but I bet you could go back all the way through to find any candidate of either party that had the hold that he does right now. So if he chooses to run, and I believe he will, you look at the schedule he's keeping up. the activity, whether it's books or out there on tour or endorsements, he has become the force within the Republican Party. And every indication is that is a guy who is not done yet.
If I'm going to give Joe Biden a hard time, I've got to do the same for Donald Trump. Do you really think that we should have a president in their late 70s in the White House? Do you think he would be physically up to the job?
Normally, I would say no. I mean, I'm not a fan of having presidents in their mid-70s, not because it's pro or anyone who has an aunt, an uncle, a parent, a friend that's in their mid-70s knows that they're different from, in terms of the spry in their step than they were in their 50s or their 40s or even their 60s. But that being said, I will tell you that Trump is very unique. I mean, when I was in the White House, keeping up with him was not an easy task. And still, if you look at the schedule that he keeps and you just mentioned it with his interview with Nigel. He is not an individual that acts in his mid-70s. He acts like an individual in his early 60s at best.
What kind of boss was he, Sean?
He's demanding. I always used to tell people, you know where you stand with Trump. If you did a good job, you knew it. If you didn't, you also knew that too.
And did you enjoy your time in the political front line as, of course, the face and voice of his administration? You were the 30th White House press secretary. A huge job.
I grew up kind of a middle-class kid from Rhode Island in New England, and the idea of working in the White House and having that relationship with the president is something that I frankly never thought of. But that's why America is such a great country. So did I enjoy it? I don't know that I enjoyed it every day, but it was an honor to do it every day. And yeah, there were some really enjoyable parts of it. There was some amazing aspects of witnessing history. So I would never trade it for the world. It was an amazing period of my life and be part of history like that, to have a front row seat and interact with a leader of the free world is something that, I'll be honored till the day I die to have done.
Now, Sean, you are a successful published author. The bestseller is out now. We'll give the details again at the end of our chat. You are a broadcaster and, of course, a public speaker as well. If Donald Trump were to return to the White House, might you like to have a role?
No. I am a great supporter and friend, but I am enjoying life after politics. I spent 30 years in politics. I was the spokesman for the National Party for 6 years. Prior to working for Trump, I was in politics on Capitol Hill and throughout campaigns. For the first time in my life, I can speak for myself. I enjoy life. I get to spend time with my family. Politics, whether it's, over in the UK or across the pond here, is a very intense lifestyle. And I've enjoyed it. I've loved it. I've been honored by the opportunities I've gotten. But there's a point at which you say thank you. And after you get out and have a chance to breathe, you go, okay, that's a young man's sport. I'll let them do it.
Well, listen, you've got plenty of vim and vigour, but I don't blame you stepping out of the public limelight, especially with an amazing book in the pipeline, Sean. It's called Radical Nation, The Dangerous Scheme to Change America. It's out now. As I've said, it's getting rave reviews, one of the most talked about books of the year. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to catching up soon. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family. Fascinating stuff. All the biggest names speak to GB News. Now, I'm looking forward to the rest of the show. My panel are back to react to tomorrow's front page headlines. And in our news agenda, lots of big topics to get through. Could Tony Blair rescue the Labour Party? What do you think about the idea of him returning as leader? He has won 3 elections. What do you think about political comebacks? We'll discuss that shortly. And before the end of the programme, another Great British game show. And this one's a corker. It celebrates Great British architecture. And I want you to play along at home. So I'll see you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
So true.
Should there be a referendum on the licence fee, the BBC licence fee? Big response to that. Tony in South Wales. Hello, Tony. Thanks for watching the show and for your email. Hi, Mark. Great show as ever. I think the TV licence should have been scrapped years ago and people should be given the freedom of choice via a subscription, and the BBC should have been taken to court under the Trade Descriptions Act by calling it a TV licence, whereby it's a BBC licence and they've been ripping off the British people for years. Disgusting. It's a TV licence, but actually all I know is my TV works with or without one via a 13-amp plug, electricity, and all the rest of it. Keep up the excellent work. To the best news network on British TV. Kind words, high praise. Thank you so much, Tony. Lots happening on Twitter. The very, very talented broadcaster Ian Dale has retweeted We Feel Your Pain, a comedy item that I do occasionally in the show about a celebrity. Take a look on our Twitter feed. And also my big opinion monologue at the start of the show. It's all about junk modelling. Take a look if you missed the beginning of the programme and let me know your thoughts. But reacting to the big stories of the day is writer and broadcaster Charlie Peters, political commentator Georgia Gilhooly, and research fellow at the political think tank Benjamin Loughnane. Now, the Queen might not appear in public again for the rest of this year. Her Christmas plans, which include a traditional walkabout outside a church near her Sandringham home, have been thrown into doubt due to a rise in COVID cases. But perhaps more concerning is the latest photograph released by Buckingham Palace earlier this week. The columnist Sarah Vine said, I was struck by how small she seemed. She still looked fabulous, of course, but her clothes hung a little loose. And that cloud of white hair, the white dress, those eyes, the colour of blue sky, made her a touch too ethereal for my liking. So at the age of 95, is it time for Her Majesty to put her feet up and retire from a life of public service? I mean, Benjamin, that's the question. I don't think it's a question of abdication. The Queen won't do that. But should she retire?
No, I don't think so. It's a case of duty unto death for me. You know, monarchs aren't they're not like elected leaders where you say they get to a certain age and it's time to get rid of them. You know,
is that the same as being a GB News presenter?
Yes, I think so.
Duty until death?
I think, you know, you'll be here for a good few years yet, but we're not letting you go anywhere.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Dead. No, but really it is a case of, you know, she's the monarch.
Yeah.
It is not an elected position. It's not a job. You don't retire. You carried on, and that's the whole point of the monarchy. I think she needs to carry on until the very end.
Well, don't you think, Charlie, that this will be an opportunity for, speaking of Charlie, Prince Charles, to actually train up for the role, let the Queen take her active duties, and she can sit down and enjoy the corgis and, you know, have a well-deserved break?
Since conception, he has been training up for the role. Again, this has been his life's work. He does not need to take on the responsibilities before coronation in order to train for the job. I mean, Sarah Vine writes in this column that the Queen seemed ethereal, but for many of us, that is all we have ever known her as. She is ethereal, kind of angel-like, cut above the rest, and that really kind of represents her stature above the country. She isn't like us. She isn't meant to be like us, and that she seems kind of, I don't know, kind of angelic, as Sarah suggests. Seems kind of fitting for me. Sure, well, she looks 95. For goodness.
Well, I think she looks incredible for 95. Yes. That's the thing. And Georgia, my view of the Queen is that if she didn't feel up to these tasks, she wouldn't do them.
Absolutely. I think, you know, if she was gravely ill, she has been ill and incapacitated and in hospital before, she wouldn't be going to these events. And I think that I agree with you, Charlie. She is supposed to look different to us. She's supposed to look cut above the rest. She is the monarch. And I think that Sarah Vine was probably being a bit inflammatory in her column, trying to say that the Queen sort of looked worse than she usually does. For example, I think in that photograph, she doesn't look terrible or anything like that. She really just sort of looks, as you were saying, like a 95-year-old woman.
Also, it's actually all right to be a bit skinny, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that's actually, I think doctors will say that she looks to be in rude health for 95. But either way, we wish Mom a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully she features very actively in it. Are we getting close to a Tony Blair comeback? You heard me right. Have you just spat out your beer? The journalist Peter Hitchens, who's always a great read in the Mail on Sunday newspaper, argues millions of people clearly want to be ruled by some sort of populist strongman who bosses them around for their own good. He says COVID, which seems to have become a permanent fixture rather than a passing disease, provides a perpetual excuse for such a government. So does Labour need Tony Blair back into Downing Street and you know, essentially see Labour back in power? What do you think about this, Georgia?
It's an interesting question. I think that if Tony Blair were to sort of re-enter, or someone like him, as Peter Hitchens describes him, someone who's sort of quite charismatic, able to win a lot of votes by sort of being a lot of froth, and then the people around him are providing the quite authoritarian policies, I think that could be a path to electoral success for the Labour Party, especially depending on what happens with the economy prior to the next general election. However, I don't think it's a good thing for the country. I think New Labour was an absolute disaster for Britain. Uncontrolled immigration, which they admitted was a deliberate project to change the country, trying to introduce ID cards, the Human Rights Act, so many failures, not even to mention the economy actually in that case. And I think that we will be heading for even worse territory than we already are now if Tony Blair does decide to
Labour presided
come
over
back.
many years of economic growth. The credit crunch was a sort of global financial crash that wasn't really their fault, was it? And of course, you have unprecedented investment in the NHS, in education, infrastructure, and much more.
The education system is absolutely on its knees in Britain, and a lot of that began during the New Labour years. And I'm not talking about the sort of the woke stuff that people like to criticise. It's easy to on the surface. I'm talking about standards when it comes to teaching grammar, when it comes to the curriculum. And I'm absolutely not trying to suggest that the Conservative Party has not played a part in this. They absolutely have. They were complicit during the Blair years, and then they undertook essentially a Blairite reformation of themselves when Cameron ascended to the premiership in 2010.
Yeah, it was Tony Blair Mark II. But, I mean, that would be the mother of all political comebacks, wouldn't it? You couldn't put it past Tony Blair not to win one more election.
Yeah, well, I don't think he would. I think people reject Blair. What we need to be more worried about is someone who is the next Blair. So they are the same figure. It comes back. It's the same sort of spirit, as it were.
And Keir Starmer thinks he's the next Blair, but Tony Blair, he ain't.
No, he's Kinnock. He's more Kinnock than Blair.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's so... I don't know how he walks around with that fence between his legs at all times. You know...
quite a manoeuvre.
Yeah, he's almost worse than Corbyn, because at least people knew what Corbyn was and what he stood for and knew to sort of reject it or accept it, whereas Keir, just no one really knows what he believes.
Georgia mentioned wokeness, extreme political correctness, and that's something that Tony Blair has spoken out over, and he recently said that actually Labour have got to get rid of extreme political correctness.
Well, he'll jump on any bandwagon, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah, but it's refreshing, isn't it, to hear a key figure from the left criticising wokeness.
But it's not because he believes it. It's because he believes that it will make people like him more. I think that's...
Isn't it because he understands the country, he understands Britain, which he demonstrated 3 times over?
But I don't think that's why he said it, is the main thing.
He understands immediate opportunity. And I think he's also failed to grapple with the responsibility that many of this wokeness is a consequence of the institutions that he defiled and denigrated during his premiership. It's no surprise that after a massive expansion of the university system, we now have all of these harpies and strange people from their ivory towers telling us how to live and how awful we all are. I mean, if he wants to lecture us on the kind of awful rise of wokeness, perhaps he could look internally first and assess what he has done to cause this scourge.
Do political comebacks work?
Well, I think they do, unfortunately. And I think, rather worryingly in this case, we are moving towards a culture in the West where elderly leaders are seen as quite positive. There's a lack of vitality in our political system. Joe Biden is 10 years older than Tony Blair, and he's apparently going strong over in the White House.
So we're told.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not out of the question.
I tried to get a medical diagnosis from Sean Spicer, but he wasn't having any of it. This is a man that knows how to handle press questions,
sure.
Let's be honest. Would you welcome a return to political public life and from Tony Blair? What do you think? Maybe he could enter Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, Tony Blair's shadow health secretary, shadow foreign secretary. What do you think? Would you welcome him back? Let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots more to come. Another great British game show before the end of the programme. We're going to be celebrating the life of the remarkable Richard Rogers, British architect, of course, and we'll be having a look at some of his famous buildings. Can you guess which ones they are and what their location is? Also, in our news agenda, should we be having ourselves a very merry, eco-friendly Christmas? That's right. Will you be having a green Christmas? Good luck with that, I'd say. But we'll get the views of my panel after this.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking cloudy but brighter for most, duller with some patchy drizzle over the hills. Let's take a look at the details. Across the southwest, it'll be cloudy through the morning, though over the hills and moors, such as Dartmoor, there'll be some patchy fog and drizzle at times. Further east in London, it'll be rather cloudy here too, though it will feel brighter and a little warmer than Sunday morning. For South Wales, it's a cloudy start here as well, and across the hills, such as the Brecon Beacons, there'll be likely some drizzle. For the northwest, it will be a cloudier start to the day than Sunday, but it will feel a little milder on Monday morning, with temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. In the northeast, although it will be a cloudy start here, it will be much less foggy than Sunday, so feeling a little brighter and milder too, temperatures around 5 degrees Celsius. Now for southern Scotland, it's a little mixed. Another cloudy start in the west and central areas, but further north and west a little colder but brighter with sunshine. Over to Northern Ireland, the slightly different picture, continuing to be quite murky on Monday morning, with some patches of fog around and quite cloudy for all areas. Through the morning, cloud will start to lift and break up a little, so feeling brighter and milder for many. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Should Tony Blair return to public life? Big response on email. Lawrence says, hi Mark, if Blair returns, perhaps he could be questioned over war crimes.
Hey.
Daisy says, oh, come on, Mark, that was so tongue-in-cheek from you, re Blair. No way is he coming back. He was a disaster towards the end. You're just being a bit naughty, aren't you? Well, I am occasionally a bit naughty, aren't I, Daisy? Hopefully naughty but nice. That's always the plan anyway. How about this? From Mary. Hi, Mary. Thanks for your email. Mark, it was Tony Blair's government that gave birth to political correctness, a point actually made by Charlie during the ad break. As for that other moron, Nick Clegg, he has a nerve too. What he was saying about his former tweets not being acceptable in today's world. He works in social media now. He's one of them setting the rules. This is what the left do. They create the problem, then blame everyone else when it all goes tits up. Strong words there. OMG, how dare both of them. I know how it started and when, and it's on Blair's shoulders. Thank you, Tony, for that. One more. Tony Blair, he should be in jail for war crimes, says Carol. He's no friend of the British people. Skin of a rhinoceros. Thank you, Carol, for that. You're not pulling your punches and trying to find some support for Tony Blair, but it's not currently forthcoming. But if you are a Blair fan, do drop me a line. Let's get through more of our stories with my brilliant panel of Charlie, Georgia and Benjamin. How eco-conscious are you at Christmas time? Do you put Rudolph on rations, or do you indulge in turkey trimmings, wood-burning stoves and electricity-guzzling lights? The columnist Janet Street Porter says after the year we've had, sod having a grim, eco-friendly Christmas. Saving the planet can wait till 2022. Georgia, green Christmas this year?
I think it's interesting the way that Janet Street Porter wrote this column, because she seems to sort of really sit on the fence. She seems to be quite disapproving of other celebrities who have sort of a Christmas tree in every room and huge sort of centerpieces on their Christmas dinner table. But then she then says that having this grim and overly sort of eco-conscious Christmases is not what people are looking for. So I'm interested to see what sort of Christmas she'll actually have. And I think that it just is common sense. It's don't buy tons of stuff you don't need, don't waste things. Unfortunately, some people will. But I don't think people should feel the need to be guilty or sort of restrict themselves overly when it comes to this. I mean, it's Christmas, it's a time of celebration. In terms of the environmental impact, compared to, burning coal in China and India, the impact of whether I have more mince pies than I should have, it's incredibly minimal. I just don't think it's even worth a debate at this point.
How many mince pies is too many?
I think that's an answer that you can't... a question you can't answer objectively.
I don't think I've ever got past two, I've got to say.
No, personally, I would only have one.
Choose my PB on the old MP. How does your Christmas day pan out then? And do you know what it's going to be this year?
Just as normal, open presents, dinner.
And where do you stand in the whole debate of, is it Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner?
So, that's interesting. I think...
Or mid-afternoon?
We would have it at lunchtime, but we might call it Christmas dinner. But I'm from the Midlands, so I don't know what
all
people
over the shop, isn't it?
Round here call it.
Put some clocks in your house.
Yeah.
So what happens for the rest of the day? Do you sort of just collapse on
I
the
just
sofa?
laze around, to be honest. Yeah, read. Yeah.
And what's the drill with presents? When do they get opened?
So in my family, we open it before Christmas lunch or dinner. But I think I've heard that apparently it's a middle-class thing to open it after dinner.
It really is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. It's
So
also
what happens in the Peters household?
We start with champagne, of course. I mean,
at lunchtime?
A breakfast. That'd be silly.
You basically wake up... And
it's salmon blinis. It's delicious.
You wake up and you just pop one out straight away.
Yeah, no, quite literally. And I am aghast to
hear
this.
That's a good life skill.
Yeah, it really is.
You're lucky you can still do that.
At this age and all, I know, terrible. I think Georgia says, we should worry about buying too much stuff we don't need. Completely opposed to this perspective. I think Christmas is the time for splurging and...
It's OTT on purpose.
Yes.
It's the one day of the year when you have a banquet and you overindulge. You're like Henry VIII.
Right, and I love buying things that I don't need. And, the opportunity to delve into that festive purchasing spirit is a delight. And not just for yourself, but for other people. And I'm not going to use it as an excuse if I get a bad gift for someone. Oh, well, actually, this is an eco-Christmas this year. So the reason why you've got some low plastic tack is because I'm actually caring about the planet and therefore you. No, there's going to be none of that. My family, my friends, they are treated well.
I'm glad to hear it. I'll be round on the 25th. How about you, Benjamin? How does Christmas Day look for you?
I think the whole point of Christmas is walking around drunk at noon, wearing a crown, getting presents given to you, being treated.
Well, I do that in August. Each to their own.
Every day.
I'm in showbiz, love. What are you going to do?
No, but that's the whole point. It's one day of the year. It's the one day that doesn't need to be green. It doesn't need to be anything. It doesn't need to be in moderation. It's the one day where you do what you want. It's Christmas Day. Leave us alone. For one day of the year.
When do your family dine?
We have... I don't know. I'm usually drunk by the much. It's
tired and emotional.
It's a lunch, but we call it dinner because the days are shorter.
Yeah,
that's the way it works.
Of course they are. But nothing beats the days. Maybe I'm showing my age when the latest Only Fools and Horses Christmas special would come on, and you felt like the whole nation was watching. I don't think there's anything apart from GB News' live coverage on the 25th.
So true.
But I don't think there's anything that's must-see TV on Christmas Day anymore. Would you agree?
Well, it depends who's broadcasting it, of course. If it's on the BBC, then we're all going to have a bit of a struggle, considering our earlier comments. I think we're now dedicated to avoiding it on Christmas Day.
Because it was the Office Christmas special was always must-watch, wasn't it? Only Fools and Horses. Vicar of Dibley, I suppose.
I have to be honest with you, I dip in for the Queen's speech, and then it's straight back into chilling out at the fire with my family and having another one of those champagnes.
You are so patriotic. Well done. What about that? Well, look, if you've got time, let me know how your Christmas Day is going to pan out. But it's time for this. That's right. It's time for the last Great British Game Show of the season. This programme returns on the 7th of January. I'm going to miss you all hugely. But let's have some fun before we go. In the light of the renowned architect Richard Rogers' very sad passing yesterday, tonight's game will showcase his remarkably designed buildings from across his career. So RIP, the great Richard Rogers, a truly wonderful British talent. In celebration and remembrance of him, we'll be playing a game of Roger That. Yes, indeed, a very simple game in which I will show you at home and my panellists various Richard Rogers buildings, and they've got to tell me the name of the building and where it is. Some of them are in the UK and some of them are abroad. This guy built everywhere. So let's have a look at building number 1 in Roger That. OK, we'll start with an easy one. We'll call it a warm-up. Do we know the name of that building?
Millennium Dome.
I think we're pretty confident on the Millennium Dome.
It's the Millennium Dome, the O2 Arena, which started as a complete white elephant and is now a triumph, Benjamin.
I don't know. It still looks like it's under construction, doesn't it?
But it's interesting, isn't it, that it was a state-funded project. It was a complete disaster because they didn't know what to put in it, and there was a terrible queue on New Year's Eve for the Millennium, and all these dignitaries couldn't get in. And apparently the shows that were on inside were a disaster.
Yeah.
But private enterprise took over. The event company AEG bought it. And since then, it's become one of the great music venues in the whole of Europe.
It's like a blueprint from the NHS, really, in a way.
Is that right?
So, I'm being deliberately provocative.
Where's that going?
Charlie.
Where's that going?
What about that? Have you been to the Millennium Dome?
Yeah, I think I went once for a concert a few years ago where someone threatened to turn the O2 into the O3. It was huge.
Right.
Huge place. I really enjoyed it. I'd go back again.
Yeah, it's a remarkable place. Well, let's get to building number 2. What is the name of this building and where is it?
Oh, is that the Channel 4 headquarters in
Well
SW1?
done. It is the Channel 4 headquarters. Now, they still own those headquarters, even though they've moved their HQ to Leeds. But that's another great, remarkable example of Richard Rogers' design. I've been in that building, and it's fantastic inside as it is out. Of course, they made a few good shows at Channel 4 back in the day as well, didn't they? Let's move on to building number 3. OK, now what could this building be? Might be a little bit harder.
Oh, Senate.
The Welsh Parliament or the Senate?
Yeah, well, do you know what? You said Welsh Parliament, you said Senate, so I'm going to let you share the point. It is, or I believe is it Senate? I think it's how you pronounce it with a soft D.
I don't want to offend Wales.
It looks like a massive flat ski jump to me, but I mean, each to their own.
Yeah, we'd definitely like to jump off that, I must say. That's right, well done. So you'll share the points on that one. How about this building? Building number 4.
Oh, Lloyd's.
The Lloyd's building in the city.
Yes, which is a remarkable piece of modern architecture, very controversial at the time. But isn't that always the way, Georgia? When you get a new building, it's often hated, and it takes us a few years to get used to it.
Yes and no. I think when it comes to something like this, I'm struggling to see sort of the beauty of it.
Oh, it's great fun. You can see people on the elevators on the outside and you can point at them.
It kind of looks like, you know, a Helter Skelter.
It is a bit.
The side of it.
Have you seen it in the flesh?
Yeah, I've walked past it many times.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a remarkable piece of modern architecture. No, Benjamin?
I'm not a fan of it.
Really?
It looks a bit... The whole idea is that all of the internal bits are on the outside.
Exactly right.
It works, but it just looks like it's had its guts pulled out. It's not a nice image, you know.
Yeah,
I get the idea, but the execution is... Well, it's like an execution.
It's interesting because another building in central London called the Queen Elizabeth Hall was voted in the 90s the ugliest building in Britain. And it now enjoys grade 1 listed status and is considered one of the great buildings of London. So, you know, I guess sometimes it's a question of time, isn't it? The Eiffel Tower was hated when it was erected in Paris.
Still is.
And locals campaigned to have it bulldozed.
There was a man who used to go to the Eiffel Tower for lunch every day because it's the only place in Paris he could eat lunch where he wouldn't see the Eiffel Tower.
That sounds apocryphal, but is it true? That's amazing. What did you say about the Eiffel Tower?
Just really that, many people are very disappointed when they see it in the flesh.
Well, even now?
Yeah,
I think it's great the Eiffel Tower's not disappointing.
I don't have a strong opinion either way, but many people do still dislike it,
Well, there's one in Vegas as well.
Yeah, well...
So take your pick. Thank you for that tidbit, Jake. My director, Jake, obviously spends more time in Vegas than he does Paris, which says a lot about him. Let's get to our next building. OK, well, it's not the most glamorous building.
That's T5, isn't it?
It's T5. Well, you're gonna share the points again.
I'm taking all of those,
Heathrow
actually.
Terminal 5, T5, which is very modern and I would say very, very well designed terminal. How about building number 6?
Is that in Paris?
It is.
Pompidou.
Yeah,
Pompidou, the Pompidou Centre, that's right. You could actually ski down the side of that as well. Another example of the outside demonstrating what's inside, and you've got air conditioning units and ducts and all the rest of it.
Just looks like they've got scaffolding up.
Yes, a little bit. And that was a combination of Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano. How about this one, building number 7?
Oh, is that?
I can't remember the name of the building, but it's in Liverpool Street or next to Liverpool.
It looks like every other skyscraper in the city.
You need to travel a few more thousand miles than Liverpool Street.
New York now.
It is New York.
World Trade Center 3.
It is part of the World Trade Center, World Trade Center 3. Well done.
So the Liverpool Street building is a rip-off, basically, of that.
Exactly. Maybe the other way around. So
all these skyscrapers look the same.
Yes.
And how about this one? It's our final building in a game of Roger That.
Oh, good Lord, I have no idea.
Is...
Help me out here, Ben, come on.
It's a trio of buildings.
Is this in London?
No, it's
No,
not.
there's something similar.
In a very sunny location, the other side of the world.
No.
Rio de Janeiro?
No, further away than that.
Oh,
Malaysia?
You'd have to go down under to find that. Yes, it is. It is the International Towers. The International Towers in Sydney, Australia. And so there you go. That was your Great British Game Show. My sincere thanks to my brilliant panel tonight. I think you'll agree. They have absolutely over-delivered. My thanks to my amazing team as well. I had the privilege of joining GB News in July, and it's been the greatest ride, and I cannot wait for 2022. Eamon Holmes is joining us for Brexit. So many more big announcements to come. And let me tell you that Mark Dolan tonight will go from strength to strength in 2022. That's my New Year's resolution. Couldn't do it without you. I love getting your emails. It's so fabulous to get all the positive messages and the negative ones. I'm delighted to say they are in the minority, but I want to hear from all of you. And I want you to always tell me what you're loving, what you're not loving. And together we can change the world. And it's been a great journey and it continues after Christmas. I'd like to wish all of you, your friends, your family, a happy Christmas. And I guarantee you it will be a much better 2022. It can't be much worse, can it? But I've loved the ride. Thank you for making me feel so welcome. And just brilliant to have your company every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So let's pick things up on the 7th of January. That gives me a few days to build up some opinions about world affairs. But in between, I might drink a couple of beers and eat a bit of turkey, and I hope you'll be doing the same. Catch up on a couple of emails before we go. My goodness, where would we start? The Queen. Nicholas says, Mark, I've never seen the Queen smiling so much. She has a twinkle in her eye. They say if you stop doing things in your old age, it's the worst thing you can do. She's carried out this role for most of her life. What else does she know? I say she should keep calm and carry on. Tony Blair is the man who broke up the UK with his devolved assemblies, open-door immigration, destroying social cohesion and sold out Northern Ireland. I don't think he should come back. Campbell and slaphead Adonis as sidekicks. And a final one from John. Mark Dolan for Prime Minister. Mark, you have a Roman stately countenance and would look outstanding, carved in marble. Blimey. Your intro is a visionary genius and also hilarious. Well, look, thank you for your very kind words. I'll see you on the 7th of July. Merry Christmas.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News